Good evening. I'd like to start this regular meeting at 7 o'clock. And I just have a little housekeeping. First, I'd like to thank Chuck Sheehan for covering for me last meeting while I was gone. And secondly, the Board of Ed is revamping our audio and our visual for this room. There will be a drop-down screen behind that present screen with an overhead projector on it, as well as some cameras in the room for the YouTube business. And then lastly, and most importantly, there's a whole speaker system up in that ceiling that will go live, that will have sound for all of us. In the meantime, I've been instructed to urge all our commissioners to use the microphones very close to your face. There's been a lot of difficulty hearing, especially if the air conditioning is on out in the audience. Thank you very much. Minutes. No, excuse me. First, seated for this evening, and it's going to be juggling show with who's seating for which hearing. But for starting out tonight, we have Ryan Deasy, Chuck Sheehan, myself, Ben Philbrick, Lynn Conway, and Andy Meek at the end, with alternate Gary sitting out this one. So with that, I'd like to entertain motions on the minutes for August 16th, number 1702.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Thank you, Ryan. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Chuck. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. For the minutes of September 6th, number 1704, I'm going to have to recuse myself because I wasn't there. But I would love to entertain a motion.
I did watch the video. Can I make a motion? I didn't watch the video.
You watched the video?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and you're making a motion?
Making a motion to approve the minutes for September 6th.
Thank you, Ryan.
Second.
Thank you, Chuck. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
And one abstain.
Aye.
And one abstain. I wasn't here.
Okay. Thank you, Andy.
Yeah.
All righty. Keith, anything else before we jump into the Mason's Island?
Yeah, a few
Yes.
things here.
That's right.
Item 5D, Administrative Review. 5D1 is 22209 ZON, Ian Campfield. Zoning permit application for a change of use from retail to personal services for Rhodes Collar Dog Training. Property located at 769 Stonington Road, Stonington. Assessors Map 75, Block 1, Lot 6, Zone GC60. So at the last meeting, the Rhodes Collar business was before you here, asking for an interpretation that the business could apply as a personal services business rather than a dog daycare and training facility, because their business differs from those types. The commission agreed with that and voted that they could be considered a personal services use in this zone, which is allowed here. They're looking to relocate from Mystic to about a 2,100 square foot section of the Stonington Meadows building at 769 Stonington Road. There's no changes to the site or building exterior that are proposed, and the application conforms to the bulk and use requirements of the zone. It's the front section of the building closer to Stonington Road there. And the owner and the business owners are here if the commission has any further questions.
Any questions from the commission? No?
No.
Chuck?
No question, Mr. Chairman. We discussed this at length at our last meeting, and there was a presentation by the applicant and several experts. So I think the issues that I had and the questions that I had have all been addressed.
Okay, thank you. And I did watch the video as well for that meeting. I do have a question. How much retail do you expect to have at the store?
Hi, I'm Glenna Doyle, just for the record. How much retail for training, leashes, collars, training equipment like that, dog cots that we use for training, maybe, what else?
So it's mostly in-house, people coming need a new collar, not necessarily off the street, lots of traffic that way.
I don't
don't-
anticipate that,
Okay.
no.
And the only other question I had was, there's a daycare center on site?
Yes. We have a letter from her, which is in the package there, that she is aware and is fine with that. Just preempting your question, but maybe that wasn't your question.
No, my concern is, exactly, the dog's always on leash, coming and going from your premises?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I just didn't know if there's a big turnover at the daycare, or if it's just here and there. But if your dogs are
Well,
always...
we shouldn't have any real, we shouldn't connect at all, because they're
Okay.
going to be on the opposite side of the building, and their outside areas are all fenced in.
Okay, perfect.
And that part of the building is pretty removed from where we are, and we wouldn't use any entrances or exits on that side of the building.
Right. My main concern was they're on leash.
Yes, they're
Yeah.
on leash,
Okay,
absolutely.
great, thank you very much.
Especially because of Route 1.
Yes, good point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion to approve the application as submitted.
Second.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Lynn. Discussion?
No, as Chuck said, we covered this, a lot of discussion last week, so I'm comfortable.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So carried. Thank you.
So under item 6, old business, item 6A, PZ 2225BR, E.G. Perkins Reserve LLC, bond release application for bond number 1902 for E&S control associated with application PZ 1836 SPA and GPP, Latizori Development for the construction of 50 townhouse-style units of residential property located at 30 Park Drive, Mystic Assessors Map 134, Block 3, Lot 3, Zone GDD. So this application is for the full release of the $35,000 erosion and sedimentation control bond for construction of the Perkins Reserve Townhouse development. This was approved as the third phase of the Perkins Farm development off Jerry Brown Road. And this was done by E.G. Holmes, who's here tonight and is also here for the public hearing on the Mary Hall Road later. This was basically developed separately from Latizori Development's other sections of the Harbor Heights Apartments and Hartford Healthcare. Just today, we got revised comments from the town engineer where he says the work that he was looking for, riprap stone, area drain have been completed. With affirmation from the developer as to the status of the roof leader cleanouts, he'd recommend release of the E&S bond. Now, the town engineer's earlier comments were talking about work to be done to the detention pond that's right along Jerry Brown Road at where the site driveway comes in. That work is part of Latizori Development's first phase for the apartment building. So it's actually not part of the work that they were doing. So with that, the town engineer recommends approval of it. Decision deadline is tonight for it, per state statutes. And like I said, they're here if there's any questions.
So Keith, the townhouses do not use the current detention pond?
Well, it is being used, but there's some, I think, berming that needs to be done to it by Latizori Development.
And it's covered by a different bond.
It's covered by a different bond.
Right. But he is satisfied with this bond, with the work completed?
Right.
Okay. Any other-
Keith, did the town engineer opine in writing?
Yes, email today.
That's fine.
Or yesterday.
As long as we have something on the record. And so it's recommending release in full of the erosion and sediment bond.
Right.
Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, I move that the bond be released in accordance with the Department of Planning and Town Engineer's recommendations.
Thank you, Chuck. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ryan. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
So carried. Thank you, Keith.
And that's it for old business.
Alrighty. So now we will move into the public hearing for Mason's Island, round 3. And let's see, for tonight's seating, and Keith, follow along, make sure I get this correct, please. We have Ryan, who has viewed the video from last meeting. We have Chuck
Correct.
Sheehan. Myself, I've reviewed the video from last meeting. Lynn Conway and Gary Belkey will be seated, because Gary was here for all the meetings, correct? And Lynn. Great. There's a sign-up sheet by the door, and there's 3 exits for this room. And first, if you do want to speak later on, please sign in for general comments, for in favor or disfavor of this project. First, we'll hear from the applicant, and we'll hear some public input on those comments. We'll have rebuttal by the applicant if necessary, staff input, board questions, and then close the hearing, hopefully. Might as well read it one more time, Lynn. Yes. Refresh everybody's memory.
You don't have any way to project this, do you?
I have a flash drive.
Outstanding.
Would that work in there?
That would be great. I think,
Yeah, I think it worked. It worked, yeah.
Yes,
And
Lynn.
while you're
Keith, is that
doing
working
that,
tonight?
Right.
Yeah.
pursuant to the general statutes of the state of Connecticut revision of 1958 and all amendments thereto, and pursuant to the zoning regulations of the town of Stonington, Connecticut, the Planning and Zoning Commission hereby gives notice that it will hold a public hearing at the Stonington Board of Education District Office, 40 Field Street, Pawcatuck, Connecticut, on Tuesday, September 20th, 2022, at 7 p.m. on the following application. PZ 2223SD in Can, Mason's Island Company, subdivision of coastal area management review applications for an 11-lot residential re-subdivision, property located on Schoolhouse and Cormorant Road, Mystic Assessor's Map 181, Block 3, Lot 1, Zone RM15. This is continued from the September 6, 2022 meeting.
There we go.
Nice.
So we just up and down to move this.
Did you click it?
No, I didn't touch anything.
It's
So
a
are we going
delete.
to take
If
off
you could take it.
up where we left off? We don't need to review everything so far, correct?
How many
So
slides
only
you
the
have?
outstanding
I've got
items?
18 total, but, I mean, I guess if we could stay on this one for now, this would be more than, this would be good enough for me to explain.
Stay on that one, you say?
Yeah,
Okay.
is there any way to rotate it back?
That's done.
Image, yeah, it looks like if you hit that, it should rotate back.
Just have the color right
No.
I'm not sure how to do that.
Okay.
If that's a PDF, if you just go into Adobe, I think you can rotate it in Adobe.
It's just a
Yeah, it's
projection.
Yeah, it's just the USB right into this, so there's not a computer. Yeah.
There you go.
Settings would probably do it.
Oh, now it's completely upside down. Is that, I think that's hooked up to, I think my presentation will be quicker than this.
And yeah, there's not actually revised plans that the commission hasn't seen before. There's other revised info, but not the plans.
No. All right. Well,
Do the best you can.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
per the request of Mr. Sheehan, I did bring
Well, thank you for trying.
this
Yeah.
for us to use, and unfortunately,
Oh, we tried.
we tried. All right, so for the record, my name is Norm Tebow, Killingly Engineering Associates, and just a quick recap, we're here to permit an 11-lot subdivision. It'll be 10 residential building lots and 1 open space lot. Total acreage of the property is just a little bit shy of 17 acres. We've got 4.6 acres in open space, and each one of the lots is an acre or greater in area. The one significant change to the plan, and this is not since the last meeting, but as you know, we originally had a through street that went from Cormorant Road to Schoolhouse Road, and after some discussions with the fire districts, the Masons Island Fire District did not want us to come through to Schoolhouse Road, so we redesigned the road with a cul-de-sac turnaround, which ultimately is going to require a waiver from this commission to exceed the maximum cul-de-sac length. That being said, I have since the last meeting, one of the remaining issues that we had was there was some additional drainage items that the town engineer wanted me to review. Specifically, he had found a copy of the original drainage computations that were done back in 2004 that were used to size the stormwater basin that we are going to be utilizing. So he wanted me to come in and take a look at these drainage computations with him, review them, and see how they compared to what we came up with. For the existing conditions, they were very, very similar. A couple of curve numbers and surface changes that we had compared to them. But, within the margin of error, the existing conditions were very, very similar to what the original designers came up with. What we found with the stormwater basin is that it was actually constructed much larger than what was on the original plans, and it's also deeper.
As built is bigger.
As built is larger,
Thank you.
correct. So it turned out to be probably 30 to 35% larger.
Wow.
And it was also deeper. The bottom elevation of the basin originally was supposed to be at elevation 4. It's actually at elevation 2. So it gives it a lot more storage capacity than what was originally designed. So what we found is that For the larger storms, specifically the 25-year and 100-year storms, those were the two storms that were actually analyzed in the original drainage report. My report does anywhere all the way from the 2 to the 100. But comparing those two storms, we actually found that for a 25-year storm, we are discharging 7.69 CFS less than what was originally designed. And for a 100-year storm, we are 17.16 CFS, and that's cubic feet per second, less than the original design. And this is simply because the basin is that much larger, and we're able to store and meter the discharge because of that. There is an emergency overflow in the basin. Even for the 100-year storm, we are nearly 2 feet below that emergency overflow. So there's a lot of capacity in that basin. It's our opinion and that of the town engineer that the design is sufficient. We are in agreement. He had one final comment where I modified my drainage analysis, my report, and I made some statements similar to what I just told you now about the reductions, and he asked me to put that in a table form so that it would just be a little clearer, which is what I did. He sent that email out this afternoon to myself and to Keith, and asked and did recommend that the commission, he would be comfortable with the commission moving forward this evening, provided that the report were updated. And I have a hard copy of the report here. I emailed an electronic copy to both Keith and the engineer as well.
Thank you.
And just as another note too, for the opinion of probable cost, essentially the bond estimate that we put together for erosion and sedimentation control. We have silt fence, staked hay bales, temporary sediment traps, temporary line channels, stone check dams, anti-tracking entrances, loam and seed disturbed areas, and we came up with a subtotal of $49,475. We have a 10% contingency added upon that as well, so the total of $54,422.50, which Mr. Greenlaw and I are in agreement with as well. And then finally, I'd just like to review quickly our request for waivers aside from the length of the cul-de-sac. Per section 4.4.2, sidewalks, we are asking that the commission waive sidewalks because there are no sidewalks elsewhere on Mason's Island. So we don't feel it's necessary for this project. Section 4.4.11.1, a landscape plan prepared by a professional architect. Each of these lots will be developed and designed accordingly with appropriate landscaping. I think early on in this presentation, we explained to the commission that all of the homes will be built and designed by a team that is going to create some consistency within this development. So each of these lots will be landscaped accordingly as they are developed. Section 4.4.11.2, roadway lighting. In order to preserve the dark sky views and in keeping with the design of the other island development, request a waiver for roadway lighting. And finally, the cul-de-sac street. As I said before, the Masons Island Fire District did not agree with our through road, and as a result, the design plans were modified to depict Kingfisher Way as a cul-de-sac. Section 5.6.9.1 of the subdivision regulations restricts the length of a cul-de-sac to 600 feet. And as you see, there is at least the western half of the cul-de-sac. We request that the commission allow construction of a cul-de-sac with a length of 958 feet with access from Cormorant Road. Granting of this waiver would resolve the drainage and traffic concerns and alleviate the risk of an injunction being filed on this development by the Masons Island Fire District. I might also note that if we actually count Cormorant Road as the beginning, the total length is approximately 1,700 feet, even though our cul-de-sac kind of starts at the terminus of Cormorant Road. And I think those were the final items that we had left at the termination of the last meeting. I'd be happy to answer any further
So you have
questions.
4 waivers?
Yes, sir.
I've written 5 for some, okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I think I'll hold my questions for you after we hear from the public, if that's okay with you.
Sure,
Okay,
absolutely.
thank you.
You're going to hold all questions.
I'm going to go with the public first.
Okay, fine.
And then we'll go to ours,
You got it.
if there are any. Thanks, Steve. Okay, Rick Newton, please.
Rick Newton, Meadowbrook Lane Mystic. I'm also chair of the Climate Change Task Force.
Thank you.
I'm speaking under general comments, and I just want to bring attention to an item in the planner's report from the DEP, their comments. I feel that the DEP comments often don't get enough attention. In the second paragraph, they have noted numerous times that development of Masons Island Road poses a potential flood hazard due in part to the Masons Island Causeway that floods. It floods during king tides, it floods during storms, and I would add that with sea level rise, it's going to be even more of a problem as time goes on. And as noted in here, according to the state statute, Connecticut Coastal Management Act, you're required to ensure that hazards to life and property are minimized. The Masons Island Causeway has been in the hazardous mitigation plan for over 15 years as the #1 risk. It's also in the coastal management or coastal resilience plan as the #1 risk, and the town has, through numerous administrations, has done nothing to address the issue. So you can just be assured that things are going along the same way as they always have. Masons Island will be a true island in the next 50 years probably. And I mean, that may not be a big deal because people live on islands all the time, but it's just something you should take into consideration. Thanks.
Thank you, Rick. Betsy LaBelle?
Hi, my name's Betsy LaBelle. I live at 9 Niag Point Road. I am an officer of the Masons Island Property Owners Association, and I'm representing the association to say that we fully support this plan. We think it's wonderful. We appreciate the cooperation we've had throughout this, and that's it. Just telling you we support it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Moody?
Good evening, Jim Moody. I live on Old North Road adjacent to the development. I spoke last time in favor. I guess I just have a follow-up just because I was a little unclear from the change last time about the drainage onto Old North Road, and you changed from something to something. I think you ended up with a berm. I just wanted to make sure that at the end of the day, the town engineer was okay with that surface runoff and the change in the design to represent what it is today. And then secondly, on a separate issue, you know, I'm on the online, I get all the agendas and the minutes and stuff. I just wanted to say, I think it's unusual, but the minutes from the last meeting didn't show up on the website yet, so just as a point of process, maybe. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do you have any input from any of that, Norm, or should we go ahead with our staff?
Yep. Regarding the flood hazard, there is only one lot where we're going to have to account for the flood hazard, and that is lot, of course I can't read it on there, hang on. That would be lot 622. We have some lower elevations there, so the construction would have to be such that we're going to have to raise the grades there to bring the living and any kind of mechanicals up above that flood elevation of 11 and a half. Regarding the berm, let me see if I can pull this up here. All right. Well, I'll show it on this portion over here. I've got it shown on the plan here along the northern property line, and the land just gently kind of, it's gentle terrain that kind of drains from west to east. So if you go all the way to the east, where the terminus of the drainage is, and then the drainage goes north toward the stormwater basin. On the back of the lot of lot 6-11, there is actually a flared end section installed on that lot that is connected to an existing manhole there. That is also the same manhole that we are going to be tying our drainage into, and that goes directly to the stormwater basin. So any kind of flows that may come across these developed lots and flow to the north toward the abutting properties will be intercepted by this berm, and the flows will be conveyed in an easterly direction to this flared end section and ultimately to the stormwater basin. So I think those were the two items that were brought up. One other thing too, show. All right, I think Mr. Sheehan, you wanted to see where that stormwater basin is. Here's the overall, and if you look in the upper right-hand corner of this particular drawing, you can see where that stormwater basin is actually located. Okay, so I think that was your last comment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Keith, do you have any input?
Yeah, as was mentioned here, the town engineer provided updated comments, I believe it was today, that are in your packet, where he says he's reviewed the revised drainage report and plans. He's recommending action by the commission with the stipulation that the applicant's engineer will provide a final drainage report, specifically with updated tables to address the remaining town engineer drainage comments. And I have recommended stipulation that the final plan shall be reviewed to the satisfaction of the town engineer, just for that, in case of any other small issues that might come up under his review. The big thing we were waiting for from the last meeting is input from the public safety providers on the length of the cul-de-sac, which we've got since then. The Wickety-Quock Fire Department, who would be the one to provide emergency services. Quambog.
Not Quambog.
Yeah, I always mix those two up. They submitted writing that they support the new design. The applicants went back to the police commission last week, and they were in support of the new design also. So that was the biggest thing we were waiting for. We also have comments from both fire districts in which they are preliminarily in favor of revising the fire district boundaries, which was part of it too. To be official, the voters of the fire districts have to vote on it.
Okay.
But the leadership is in favor of it. As far as other comments we received, I'm not sure if I ever mentioned those because the hearing never quite got to that point. But, yeah, I think we did discuss before the comments from the floodplain manager, which basically said only one lot is in the floodplain. It's going to be raised up out of the floodplain. Septics are suitable for subdivision per Ledgelight Health District. As Mr. Newton noted, we did get the comments from DEP, and yeah, they do always mention the risk of new development on Mason's Island. Of course, it has to be balanced against their basic right to develop there that zoning allows them to do if they meet the flood hazard regulations and zoning and subdivision regulations. The Mason's Island Causeway, it's a tough one because it is one of the pieces of infrastructure that are most at risk. One of the issues with it is just that if you raise it up into a bridge, it just lands back down into areas that flood. So there's no easy solution to that, short of some massive public works project there. So that's something that there's just no real solution to at this point. Conservation reviewed this and recommended approval. And as was mentioned before, there's the waivers for this. And there might have been one...
I think there's a fifth one, isn't there?
Yeah, there was one that I don't think was mentioned, which was the requirement to show adjacent wells and septic systems within 100 feet of the property.
Is it, Norm, you all right with that?
Yes.
Okay.
I think the intention of that particular portion of the regulations is to make sure that we're not interfering with any well radiuses on abutting properties, but since this is all a public water supply, that's not an issue out here, so that's why we requested that waiver.
Okay, thank you.
And as far as the recommended stipulations here, number 1 was final plan shall be reviewed to the satisfaction of the town engineer. Number 2 was final plan shall include new street address and assessor's lot numbers. Number 3 is the standard language about providing the AutoCAD files or a fee to cover the GIS consultant to create the lot boundaries. Number 4, the open space transfer and drainage easement shall be recorded concurrent with the subdivision plans per the subdivision regulations. Number 5, boundary markers must be installed, certified through a registered land surveyor prior to the sale of any lots. 6 is the requirement for an erosion and sedimentation control bond. 7, final plan shall include private drive note specified in section 9.2.2 of the subdivision regulations. That's just a note that says clearly this is a private drive, the town won't maintain the road. And number 8 was something that was mentioned at one of the previous hearings. Prior to construction, the applicant should submit an unanticipated discovery plan to the Department of Planning. Such plan shall be prepared by a professional archaeologist and shall outline procedures to follow in accordance with state and federal laws if archaeological materials or human remains are discovered.
Keith, are you all done?
Yeah.
I had a question. Sorry. What?
This is funny the way you said it.
Do you have anything further to say? Is that better? On the letter from Mr. Tower, is it? Yes. He mentions of section 5.7.1 of the subdivision regulations of the town, talking about initial drainage proposals in the stormwater. Who owns, I got a little lost on this, but he thinks there might be a violation that needs to be rectified. I didn't know if you remember seeing that in his letter?
What he was referring to was when the road was a through road.
Oh, okay.
There was a question about what happens to the drainage where it intersects there.
So that got nullified with the
Right.
cul-de-sac?
That's why this was such a neat solution.
Okay.
Yeah.
Correct.
Thank you.
The road terminates on the high point
Right.
of the property, and it all drains in the other direction.
I saw that.
So there was some concern about drainage going out to Schoolhouse Road.
My other concern is from the floodplain specialist, is that his title? Associate Resiliency Planner. And he's concerned, and I got a little bit, again, lost in his Lomar F in his FEMA nomenclature. But he seems to have a concern about one of the lots.
Yeah, that's lot 6-11.
Oh, 611, not 622? 611.
Oh, it is 622.
612, yeah.
622, okay,
I think in halves all the time, so.
okay. Chuck, do you have some, shed light on this with your knowledge and
It
expertise?
is a very confusing email. I do a lot of work with this in the private sector, so Loma F is a letter of map amendment, and you understand this as well as I do.
Correct.
And what it is it's sort of a prospective determination that fill is going to be placed in the floodplain zone, bringing it up to a level that will remove the area from the special flood hazard area. And I think what he's saying is that Loma F should have accompanied the application. I think that's what he's trying to say. And that the lot is really not a lot because it's still in the special flood hazard area, which we all realize, until it's filled, it's not out.
Correct.
But even after it's filled, it's still in the special flood hazard area until you get a Loma F, which is an administrative task. In this particular case, the Loma F is going to be granted. It's an administrative matter, and perhaps one option that he doesn't suggest, that our floodplain manager doesn't suggest, that might be acceptable to him, is if we simply say that development on that lot is restricted until the Loma F is granted.
Or could we put that as a stipulation, number 9?
It would be just an additional stipulation.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
So we're allowing them to create the lot, and I'm sure the developer has every intention, because it's almost impossible to get it financed if it's in the special flood hazard area, unless it's done with cash. And,
Correct.
you know, you'd have no finance, but you'd want it out of the special flood hazard area. So all this can be done online now. It takes almost 60 days to the minute for them to react to it. If the package is perfect, you get a Loma F in the mail, they record it with the town clerk, and in perpetuity, poof, this area is out of the special flood hazard area, once it's filled.
Once it's filled.
And the engineer will take care of staking it out and making sure that it's all done right. So perhaps one way of dealing with this would be an additional stipulation that until the Loma F is granted, that one specific lot has a building restriction on it. And again, you have all the necessary documentation here to get the Loma F. Your stamp and seal on the Loma F application, which can be done online now. I highly recommend it going that way.
Yeah, we do these all the time.
Used to be, as you know, a huge pain in the neck when it wasn't online. Now it's really, the feds have really improved.
It's certainly streamlined the process quite a bit.
So that would be, at least from my practice in this area, a way of dealing with this. We protect everybody who gets subsidized insurance in town. We're managing this in accordance with the floodplain manager's recommendation. And until the Loma F is granted, nothing can happen on that one particular lot.
Right, and and typically, you know, we would do it after the site development plans have been drawn up and the site has been designed. At that point is when we could submit for that to have that removed.
So if the developer agrees, I would propose to Keith that we add that one additional stipulation, that development be restricted until the developer makes application to FEMA and a Loma F. And again, for everybody that doesn't deal in this every day, I hate acronyms. It's letter of map amendment, that's what Loma stands for. -F is fill, and it's prospective. It contemplates that the fill will be put in place to the elevations specified on the application.
Thank you, Chuck.
Yeah.
Keith, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I'd say development on lot, is it 6-22?
Yes?
Correct.
Cannot occur until FEMA Loma F is granted.
Yeah, and I might add to that too, is that when these lomas, whether it's a Loma or a Loma F, when they are granted, that portion of the property is actually removed from the flood mapping. FEMA updates their flood mapping to reflect that.
Okay. Is the rest of the commission all right with this?
You know, we may just want to say Loma or Loma F, because if you fill first and then apply, you're going to get a Loma, and that's better than a Loma F.
That's true, yeah. It's easier. I think there's a fee involved with the Loma F, and the Loma is no fee.
Right, correct.
I think that's the difference.
Okay. Thank you, Chuck. Any other questions?
I have a question. So, I understand that the fire district leaderships are in favor of the changes that have been proposed. But the constituencies need to vote that in.
That's correct.
Is there a timetable for that?
I honestly don't know the answer to that. I don't.
And then what happens if, for some reason, they don't vote it in? So are you going to wait? Is that something that you need to do before you move forward? Again, I don't know what the risk or that it's not going to happen, but it seems to me that it was a major discussion and a compromise that was reached. So,
Well, I think, simply from a practicality standpoint, if the district lines are not changed, not modified as a result of this, what you're going to have is portions of lots in two districts. It just makes a lot more sense to do it and to make sure that it's done correctly so that the district lines actually follow the boundaries of the lots themselves.
So Keith, based on that explanation, thank you, is that outside the realm of planning and zoning?
It basically is, because it's sort of their issue to deal with. If the voters vote it down, they'll just have to decide who responds to a fire on which lot there.
And is that something that the police commission needs to know about? And would they take away their whole safety analysis, et cetera?
I don't think they would. They don't, in my experience with them and what they look at, they don't seem to consult that much with fire and the fire districts with something like this.
Okay.
I'm sure they would if it was more, some large apartment building or something like that where they'd have to coordinate with them. But in the normal review of a subdivision, they don't seem to really get into that.
Okay. Again, I just wanted to bring it forward because it's not a done deal.
No. Okay. Any other questions for?
Just one quick question.
Certainly, Chuck.
For the engineer. You mentioned that the original bottom of the detention basin was proposed at elevation 4, which is logical if it's adjacent to a tidal area, because that would be above the mean ebb of a normal tide. If it's 2, is it normally subject to tidal action?
I've yet to see any water, and I suppose if you had some extreme tide events, I guess I wouldn't doubt that there'd be some water in there, but.
So I'm just to take that one step further. When you're running pond pack or whatever Bentley model you're running or hydraulic model that you're running, there are a variety of them out there. They're all good. Do you assume tidal action or do you not assume tidal action?
No, we don't assume tidal action in this particular case, and we also don't assume infiltration, which with the sandy soils out here, I'm quite sure that's going to happen, but we did not account for that.
Okay, so one would probably cancel the other.
I would believe so, yes.
Okay. Fine. And lastly, it looks like on that map, what I was concerned about when I asked this question, I didn't know the proximity of the detention basin to the subdivision, was that you actually have a drainage right away all the way to the detention basin.
Yes.
And I can see on the map that you do, so
Yeah, and-
thank you very much for putting that on there.
You're welcome.
Answers my question completely.
All right, and we actually have a drainage easement from the basin, all the way out to Mystic Harbor as well.
You understand why we would want that on there? This subdivision is reliant on that facility. We're approving it based on that facility being in place.
Yes.
And that's why we asked the question.
Not a problem.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Norm.
Thank you.
Your motion to close the hearing.
Make a motion to close the hearing?
Second.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Chuck. Any further discussion on closing the hearing?
Did you ask for anybody opposed or general comments? I think you just
I asked.
went by a list.
Everybody who signed up? But yes, any other comments? Now's your chance from the public. Thank you, Lynn. Hearing none? All those in favor of closing the hearing?
Aye.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the commission?
Mr. Chairman, I recommend we move the draft stipulation, which is shown, I'm sorry, we got to approve the waivers.
Yeah.
We have three votes this evening.
Yes, so the waivers as stipulated in Keith's package, I move approval of all the requested waivers.
Second?
Second by Ryan. Any discussion?
That's going to include that loan waiver then too?
No, the loan is a stipulation.
That's
The
a
loan is a
stipulation.
stipulation that would be in the approval recommendation.
There are 5 waivers.
Okay, with the sidewalks.
Would you like me to read them?
No, I got it.
Okay. Okay.
Second.
That's been seconded by Ryan. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. That's a supermajority, Keith.
That's right. Yeah, need 4 out of 5 for that one.
Okay, number 2 is the CAM vote.
For number 2, is that where we would also include the stipulations, the 9 stipulations?
I do that on the application, I think,
On the
in
application.
itself.
Yeah, I would think on the subdivision.
Okay. So make a motion to approve the CAM application as submitted.
Second.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Chuck. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Now the
Mr.
application.
Chairman, I move approval of the subdivision with the draft recommended stipulations. There are 8 of them shown on page 11 of, page 31 of 39. And add to that the stipulation that Keith read back to us on the granting of either a Loma or Loma F prior to development of, is it lot 622?
Yes, it is.
622.
Thank you, Chuck. Second by Lynn. Discussion. Any other questions or comments, or? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? So moved. Thank you. Mr. Sweeney, you all right if we take like a 4-minute, 5-minute stretch our legs break and then?
That'd be terrific. Let us set up too.
Okay. So we'll just take a 5-minute break, everybody.
I think I'm going to head out.
Okay. So, hello everybody. We're going to get going again with the second public hearing for the Mary Hall subdivision. Seated this evening, Ryan Deasy, Chuck Sheen, myself, Ben Philbrick. Lynn had to go. Her son's getting married in Florida tomorrow. So Gary Belkey will be seated and Andy as well.
Do we have to read that?
Read the call?
Like what Lynn does, read the...
Now the call disappeared. Do we have the call? It was read at the first
Oh, okay. I didn't-
go round.
No, but
Are you okay if we don't read the call, Mr. Sweeney?
As long as you open the hearing on the record, I'm satisfied.
We are now opening the hearing for the Mary Hall subdivision.
Thank you.
Do I need to review the ground rules? I went over them once before. We'll hear from the applicant, then input from the public. There's sign-up sheets by the door, and then we'll have rebuttal by the applicant, staff input, board questions, and we'll see how far we get this evening. All yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. members of the commission, good evening. For the record, my name is Bill Sweeney. I'm a partner and a land use attorney at the law firm of Tobin Carberry in New London, Connecticut. And as always, I certainly appreciate the opportunity to appear before this commission this evening. I represent EG Home LLC, which is a luxury home builder based in Southbury, Connecticut. My client has submitted an application to the Planning and Zoning Commission to modify a previously approved residential development to be located in an RM20 district between Mary Hall and Greenhaven Roads in Pawcatuck, Connecticut. Joining me tonight, a few introductions. I have Matt Gilchrist and Chris Bennett. They are principals with EG Home. You'll be hearing a little bit from Chris later regarding the architecture of the project. I also have Jessica Bates and Mike Dion. They are our civil and traffic engineers with BL Companies. Our lead engineer, Bill Fries, who you may have met in the past, had another engagement tonight, and so Jessica was nice enough to fill in for him. I'm going to try to do most of the presentation, and Jessica and Mike are going to be available for any questions you have on their specific disciplines. EG Home is no stranger to Stonington. In fact, you had them earlier on your agenda tonight. They took over the later phases of the old Mystic Estates project off of Pequot Trail, and as well as building a component of the Perkins Farm development. They've garnered an excellent reputation in this community for building high-quality residential housing, and I think most importantly, delivering on the promises they make to this commission. EG Home has entered into a contract with Terenzia Excavation to purchase approximately 25 acres of land between Mary Hall Road and Greenhavens Road, a site which was approved over a decade ago by this very commission for the so-called Crescent Club development. Now, I know that there isn't anyone on this commission today that was here on the commission back in 2010, but that project ultimately consisted of a total of 75 approved housing units. There were 11 single-family residential lots located on Mary Hall and Greenhavens Roads, and in between the roads there was an attached multifamily housing project of an additional 64 units. As part of that project, several large parcels of land were also conveyed to the Stonington Land Trust and to the town of Stonington. Those conveyances actually took place shortly after the permits were resolved on that project. And as some of you may know or have heard through the grapevine, the Crescent Club project was fairly controversial at the time. And it was due to the significant multifamily component that drew a lot of substantial neighborhood opposition. The project approvals were actually appealed to the Connecticut Superior Court, and the case was ultimately resolved by way of a stipulated settlement between all the parties, which included, among other things, some special provisions for blasting related to the project. And we'll talk about that tonight as well. That stipulated approval has been renewed in the intervening years, but the only actual development, if you go out into the site, if you're familiar with the site, if you took a drive by it, that has occurred to date is the conveyance and the partial development of 4 single-family house lots along Mary Hall Road. The other 71 approved units, whether they were multifamily or single-family lots, have not been built. It is important to note, though, that the approvals for the Crescent Club project are still valid to this very day, that larger project could proceed as soon as tomorrow if the current owner wished to move forward. However, I'm happy to say tonight that EG Home is poised now to take over this project and is here tonight to modify those approvals obtained over a decade ago to significantly reduce the overall density of the development and replace the attached multifamily housing units and the remaining single-family house lots along Greenhaven Road with 42 detached single-family luxury homes organized within a common interest community. This reconfigured development plan for the project requires a new special permit approval from the Commission as a, quote, open space development under your regulations. And because we're recombining approved lots, we're changing the nature of some of the private roadways that were proposed, and we're designating additional open space lands as part of the project as well. There's a modification of the original re-subdivision approval that was approved as part of the Crescent Club project has also been requested. Now, you may not be intimately familiar with your open space development regulations. They're an infrequently used zoning tool, and they're codified in section 6.6.22. Open space developments are explicitly allowed in the RM20 district by special permit, which is one of the permits we're seeking tonight. The purpose of these regulations was to provide flexible bulk and dimensional requirements to encourage creatively designed single-family residential developments, which also preserved open space in natural areas. The open space development regulations in your code book right now permit clustered single-family development on either undersized individual lots or, in the case as it is in this project, within a common interest community where the common areas are kept under the control of a homeowners association and each home is an individual unit in that project. The regulations allow a density of development equal to what a traditional subdivision on the same property would yield. And the regulations also require at least 50% of the project area to be put into dedicated open space. We intend to do that as well on this project, and that additional open space will supplement the significant open space that was already put aside for the original iteration of this project. And we'll talk a little bit about that tonight as well. As I said, we're going to be organizing this project within a common interest community and meeting or exceeding the requirements of the open space development regulations. Tonight I'm going to walk you through the existing site conditions plan. I'm going to walk you through the previously approved plans for those of you who are unfamiliar what was previously approved. I'm also going to walk you through the new project design. And I think at the end of our presentation you'll see how significantly different our plan is and how much more open space we preserve and how far less intense the overall project is. I'm going to provide you a very brief overview of the engineering details and the traffic impact, which is actually quite a bit less as a result of the downsizing of the number of units in the project. And both Ms. Bates and Mr. Dion will be available if you have any specific detailed questions about stormwater calculations or, for instance, the traffic study that we conducted. I do want to put into the record that our plans have been fully reviewed and approved by all your departments and agencies, including the Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Commission. We will also tonight, and Chris Bennett from EG Home is going to share with you some concept renderings of the proposed residences that we'll be building in this project, the different styles of homes that we're going to be offering with garages to potential future residents. But really, from our perspective, the most important aspect of this project is that the modifications we're making to the original approved plan make this development and the development of this site much more in character with the surrounding neighborhood than the attached multifamily housing development that was originally approved. We've actually, in addition to the notice that was put in the paper and the notice that we're required to send to neighbors, my client has taken it upon themselves to meet with the neighbors in advance of our application process, to share with them our plans for the project. Some of those neighbors are original plaintiffs in the appeal that was taken almost a decade ago. And quite frankly, we've been extremely encouraged by the warm reception we've received by many of those neighbors to this modified plan. So at this time, what I'd like to do is just go through a short slideshow. All of these slides are in our package of site plans, and so there's no new documents here. We're just putting them up on the screen. But I'm going to try to walk you through it sort of at a high level, and then I can always go back, or you can stop me if you want. We can answer any specific questions. So first, the first slide I have is just a slide to orientate you. We have the Pawcatuck River running down the center of this slide. This is an aerial photo of southeastern Stonington in the Pawcatuck area. I have in green indicated the site. We're going to be talking primarily about the northern half of the site where the development is proposed. The southern half of the site is open space area that's already been dedicated as part of the original Crescent Club project. And in particular, I'll be showing in a second the connections of that northern half of the site and the frontages along Greenhaven and Mary Hall roads. Just one last thing, there's about 50 acres in total in that green area. The northern half, where our development will be taking place, is about 25 acres. Next slide. So this is an existing conditions survey of the property. A couple things to point out on this, and maybe I'll just walk over here, just hopefully you can pick up. Let's see here. This is Mary Hall Road here, and at the top is Greenhaven Road. This is the land that was previously dedicated with the original development. Our development will be focused in this area of the site. This is topography. You can see that there's a nice plateau in sort of central to the site. That's where most of the development is going to take place on the property. I would just point out that these parcels were actually given to the Stonington Land Trust. There was, as it was a small parcel here, and actually the town of Stonington actually got a parcel sort of landlocked in this area as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But that's just to get you situated with the property that we're in. Next slide. So the slide here, and I hope everybody can see, I hope I'm not blocking anybody, is the original Crescent Club project that was subdivision and project that was approved back in 2010. As I said before, it consisted of both single-family house lots and multifamily units. There were 4 lots, 1, 2, 3, 4, along Mary Hall Road. Those 4 lots have been conveyed out to third parties. They're actually been built on at this point. There was a large central parcel which had 64 residences, and we'll be showing you drawings of what those looked like back in the time. But you can see they were fairly dense and sort of packed in around a loop road system. And there was actually 7 lots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lots along Greenhaven Road as well, for a total of 75 total units. All the drainage to the site sort of flowed to the lowest part of the site into this detention basin structure. And again, there was open space preserved in this direction and this piece as well that the town received title to. Next slide. So, as part of our project, and part of the reason we're seeking the modification of the re-subdivision, is we're taking that large central parcel that was going to be used for multifamily and the 7 vacant house lots on Greenhaven, and we're going to combine them. We're going to consolidate them into a single parcel for the development of this project. Again, these 4 sites, these 4 properties have already been conveyed out, so we can't combine them, but we're going to take what's left, the undeveloped portion of the site, and we're going to use that as the basis, sort of the fundamental footprint for the future development. Next slide. Yeah, go back one. There you go. So this is the site layout of the project that we're proposing, our open space development. The primary access is up in the upper right, off of Mary Hall Road. We're using the same road profile, the same entranceway, the same curvature of the road, and we're actually replicating that same loop system that was approved for the multifamily. But instead of multifamily, we're going to have single-family detached homes around that loop and on the inside of that loop. We're going to have that same large area for detention, sort of in this corner of the site. We're going to have pavilion area here as well. Each of these homes is going to have at least a 2-car garage. We do have some surface additional overflow parking for visitors and for guests. But the connection out to Greenhaven Road in particular is now just emergency only. So rather than having a full road coming out basically across from Schiller Avenue, we're going to have a gravel emergency access road with a gate for fire and emergency access only. So really the only point of direct access is going to be off Mary Hall Road. We're going to keep unnecessary traffic coming out onto Greenhaven. What's really important, I think, also about this is what's not being developed in this plan. All of this land along Greenhaven Road is going to be kept in its natural state. So those 7 lots that were going to be house lots, they're going to stay forested. They're going to be a buffer to those existing homes in that direction. We've also, there's a line that sort of goes around this whole project as well. That's the limit of clearing. If you compare that limit of clearing to what was proposed in the original, we've pulled it back to try to keep as much natural vegetation on the site as possible to provide buffers for screening and privacy to the surrounding neighbors. Next slide. So this is a colorized version of that same plan. We did this just to try to show the amount of sort of green space that's going to be preserved in this new iteration of the project. Again, we have the detention basin here on this corner of the site. We're going to have, this area will be improved lawn around the units, but all along Greenhaven Road, this large area here will all stay forested. We'll have forested areas along the town-owned open space that was given. And effectively, we have now created a perimeter around the development with natural vegetation. I'll talk a little bit more about some of the plantings, but we'll be putting street trees in as well along the road system. We have pedestrian connection to the pavilion and all the way out through a pedestrian sidewalk down to Mary Hall Road. Next slide. So I'll try not to get into a lot of detail, but we have submitted an erosion and sediment control plan that's been reviewed and approved by the town engineer. We have our temporary stockpile areas. We have a diversion swale that brings soil during construction to 2 sediment trap basins. We have our limits of clearing as well, shown in red, so that we make sure that we preserve those areas of the site with the natural vegetation. We do have 2 construction entrances put into the plan as well. We have submitted a bond to the town engineer. He hasn't approved it yet, but we believe it's close and certainly subject to his final approval. That's erosion control. Next slide. This is our general drainage plan. We tried to mirror, and in fact we did mirror what was done on the last project. This site slopes downward in this direction to this corner of the property, this sort of southeasterly corner. We've got a series of catch basins that collect flow from both grassed areas but also from streets. They bring that down into a forebay and into this detention basin for water quality renovation. We've designed it to handle the 2, 10, and 25-year storm. We have actually reduced peak flows as compared to the last project due to the design. There is a rise here in the road leading out, and so this is about the high point, and so flow, rainwater, stormwater from here actually flows down the road, and there's a small basin out in front of one of the lots on Mary Hall Road. That's identical to the design that was approved 10 years ago. So that was always like that. And we've made some adjustments to that with the new city engineer, including putting a reinforced concrete pipe underneath the access way. And again, if there's any specific questions about drainage later on, Jess will be able to answer those. Next slide. Utilities. We have approval from WPC. This is a fully watered and sewered project. No septic systems, no wells. We have a will serve letter from WPCA for the project, as we did 10 years ago. On the water, we are extending an 8-inch line in Mary Hall Road, and we'll be connecting that into the existing line in 3 places. That water service will provide potable water and hydrants for fire suppression. We worked with the fire district with oversight, and I'm gonna butcher the name. I heard it before. I'm gonna butcher it again. Wikiaqua. I said I was gonna butcher it. There you go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We met with them and got their sign off on the water design. They have jurisdiction over this site, and we also provided their fire flow calculations to Westerly Water, which has approved the design as well. We have electric and also communication all coming. Everything comes off of Mary Hall Road and comes up to this loop. Next slide.
Excuse me, is it all underground?
Yes. Absolutely. That's actually a requirement for the open space design. This one's a little hard to see, but this is our landscape plan. As I said before, we're leaving much of the western and northern edge of the site in its natural vegetation. This is the area of disturbance. I already said the emergency access road is gravel. This will be improved lawn surface around the actual buildings in the central green. We have a planting plan for both of our detention basins, this large one in the southeast corner and the very small one in the northern end out by Mary Hall Road. We have flowering pear street trees planted periodically throughout the road network. We also have, for every unit, we have a planting plan with shrubs, grasses, in front of each unit as well, which will allow for some commonality. Again, this is a common interest community. Your landscaping is taken care of by the association. I should say too, and I should have said it before, is you'll see that all of these homes look sort of cookie cutter, but that's actually not what you're going to actually see out there. Those are pads for development. Our houses won't exceed the dimensions that are shown on that, but we're going to have different designs and different floor plans so that this is going to look like an organic neighborhood. We're going to have multiple two-story and ranch-style development. And you're going to see pictures Chris is going to go through with really, really nice architecturals, but it's going to be a mix of them so that owners can pick and choose the kind of house they want. And that's going to really create a much more organic feel. It's not going to be a cookie-cutter development by any means. Next slide. All right, so this is an important slide. One of the big things in the settlement agreement with the neighbors was that the plaintiffs wanted certain requirements on blasting, the requirement of being properly bonded, but also that people within 500 feet, plaintiffs within 500 feet, got a pre-blast survey, and they also got a review of their well as well, if their well was within 500 feet, to express our commitment to that settlement. We've taken those requirements of the settlement and we put them into our site plan. So if you go to our general notes page in the lower right hand corner, we've actually taken those requirements that were in the settlement and put them on our site plan as a requirement. And Keith went even farther. He took our site plan general notes and put them as a condition of approval, which I think is in his staff report. So we worked really closely. We have really great neighbors who have supported our efforts to try to take over this project, and I know Chris and Matt were committed to honoring that promise that was made by a former developer for a former project. And so we can talk a little bit about that more and the details of that when we get to the actual conditions of approval later tonight. But again, this is the 500-foot radius. These are the areas. There is ledge on the site. There's 2 areas that are going to need blasting. It's just this site is going to require it, and we're going to try to do that in the most expeditious way possible to protect our neighbor's property. Next slide. All right, so this is a sightline drawing for Mary Hall Road. We showed that we had necessary sightline in both directions from the exit of Mary Hall Road. This is in our traffic report. There may be a couple mature trees, especially in front of these 2 lots, that may need to be removed. These are not trees on private property, but trees within the town right-of-way. I think the planner has suggested a condition of approval that is similar to a condition of approval that was made at the last iteration, that if we do take down a tree in the town right-of-way in front of any of these lots, that we'll offer to plant a new one on the adjacent plots land. And if they don't want it, we'll plant it on our land. I believe that's a condition, and we don't think there's really any regulation that says that, but if that's something the commission thinks is valuable, we're willing to do it. Sightlines are acceptable for the speed limit of Mary Hall Road, both the observed speed limit and the posted speed limit. We also did a traffic study for intersection level of service, the intersection level service for Mary Hall Road for the site driveway, and then also at the intersection of Greenhaven in Mary Hall. And in the build and no build scenarios, with or without this project, these intersections function at a level service A. And there's actually a slight decrease in the overall traffic generation from the project in the morning AM and the afternoon PM peak hours. I think there's a slight increase in the Saturday midday peak based on the more single-family homes here, but it's very, very similar to what was approved 10 years ago. And again, we don't anticipate any traffic issues whatsoever from the project. Next slide. Oh, that's good. Open space. So, yep, go one back. So we're adding new open space as part of this project. As I said before, we protected a significant amount, almost 20-some acres of open space in the original iteration of the Crescent Club project. We're going to be adding an additional about 13.5 acres of open space, and that's shown as on pink. on the plan here. We can't include detention basins. We can exclude wetlands, and I'll explain why we did that in a second. But any of the areas that we're going to keep in their natural area, or any areas that are going to be kept open for passive recreation use, qualify. This constitutes more than 50% of the area of the project site, so we meet the requirements of the OSD regulations. And this pink area will be held in title by the homeowners association. So the homeowners association will be responsible for maintaining this open space, either in its existing condition as natural areas or as improved lawn surface. Next slide. I do want to point out, though, that this supplements open space that was already provided in the subdivision and project approvals from 2010. So I've included the Stonington Land Trust areas and the town of Stonington land area here in blue. You might remember I came here in December of last year and talked about the ability to use these areas in calculations for this project, and you got an opinion from your town attorney saying that you certainly could use them. We were able to provide our necessary open space just on this part of the property, but I do want to point out all this land is going to be in conservation. These are held by land trusts, by the town, and this will be by the homeowners association. I would also point, this is also open space. It was just an earlier iteration of the subdivision, even before the last one from 2010, but that's also open space as well. Next slide. Next slide. So I talked about density. We have 42 units. How do you get to 42 units? The regulations require us to do a conventional subdivision yield plan, which we did. We went carefully through this with Keith. Each of our lots was laid out under the RM20 zoning requirements. Each had their own stormwater rain garden included. We provided some community stormwater areas as well. We took advantage of the open space that was set aside previously to show open space that would have been allowed under a conventional subdivision. You can see what 42 lots would have looked like if it was built under the RM20. And it's certainly, that's at a density that's really, quite frankly, somewhat out of line with what's going on in the surrounding neighborhood. We don't have 42 homes, but the way we cluster them, sort of central to the site, we can provide a perimeter, a buffer to the project. Where here, you've got houses literally up against the outer perimeter of this entire site. So this yield plan gives us the ability to do the 42 units. Next slide. All right, so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Bennett, who's going to go over the architecture of the project. And we're going to do a little comparison about what was approved 10 years ago and then what this project proposes. Chris.
Thank you. So, as Bill stated, I'm Chris Bennett. I'm with EG Home. We're located at 3 Pomperaug Office Park in Southbury, Connecticut, 06488. So, I thought I'd start by touching briefly on what is approved at Crescent Club. So, what is currently approved is there's 16 large buildings, 144 by 50 feet on the footprint. Each of those buildings house 4 townhomes with 2 bedrooms and a single-car garage with a single parking space out front. This was going to be a rental community. This is something that Terenzi has done in the past, and certainly this is in their business model. Sorry about that. Thank you. If we were going to sell these units, they probably would be, we've got 3 to 350. It may be a little higher now. It's probably more like the high 3s. So again, large footprints. And for the most part, as you drive through this community, the massing would stay the same from building to building to building to building. So you don't get, like, each unit wouldn't necessarily have its own identity, at least from building to building. So, next slide, please. So the details of our community, Bill certainly has touched on this. Again, 42 freestanding single-family homes, common interest community, and our footprints are 42 by 60. So we're going to have, I think, 4 different plans, and they'll fit within that. Some will be smaller than that. And the reason I point that out is because when you're building with a 42 by 60 plan versus a larger plan, it allows us, it makes it a little easier for us to do mass grading. We may not have to do as much blasting because we can work those houses in between nodules and not have to move as much dirt. So whereas with a large footprint, no different than a big box store on a lot, you've got to grade off that plat or that whole lot to accommodate that large box store. So Two-car garage is a standard, 2 parking spaces in front. And we will have a third car, it's like a flex garage option. We think there might be a need down here because you're next to the shore for shoreline toys, whether it be kayaks, bikes, whatever it may be. So something that may be a little unique with this project. As far as the amenity, Bill touched on it just briefly. For those of you that are familiar with our Perkins Reserve community, this is actually a rendering we would probably use during that approval. So we're going to stick with what works. So at that community, we've got a large post and beam pavilion with grill, and then we've got this outdoor fire pit. So we find that the homeowners there really utilize this amenity. They come out, they bring their coolers, they socialize. So for us as developers, I think it's important that we build an amenity that gets used, right? I think there's nothing worse than if you're paying your HOA fee monthly for an amenity that nobody's using. So again, we're going to stick with what works, and this will be the amenity. It'll be pretty close to this, maybe even exact like this. So next slide, please. Okay, so the architecture. So this architecture is age targeted. So, what does that mean? So the design of this product offering appeals to a certain buyer segment. So that buyer segment in this case is empty nest, active adult, baby boomer, baby zoomer. It's that 50 years and older group. And what they look for is they look for a lot of living on the first floor and a master suite on the first floor. They want to eliminate those steps. And so this is a product that we've actually offered in Beacon Falls, and we are selling it there currently. And to date, we've sold 142 of these homes up there with an average delivery price of about $580,000. So again, back to the buying segment. So most of the buyers that are buying here, if they've had children, those children are off to college, they've started their own families, whatever it may be. And so they're looking to downsize. They're looking to downsize, and the sweet spot seems to be about 1,800 to 2,600 square feet. So that's what we've designed this product offering for. And Bill touched on this briefly. It's a combination of ranches and 2 stories. So as you drive through the community, you'll get this up and down massy, forward and back, and I'll talk about that a little more in a second. Standard two bedroom is our standard out here, no different than the townhome community, but you will be able to option into a 3rd bedroom. We'll offer 3 to 4 different floor plans, and each floor plan will have anywhere from 2 to 3 elevations. So those elevations are going to be, modern farmhouse, they're going to be a coastal type elevation, and then probably like a classic New England elevation. So the reason we do this is so that we can have some real diversity in the street as you go down, a real streetscape. So each unit, each home feels unique. We don't allow buyers to put same model, same elevation next to each other. So as you drive down, there's real interest. You hold your eye optically, you're moving up and down, forward and back, because every home is slightly different. And we find that when you can do that, when you can create interest, you create value in the community. So as far as the construction of these homes, we'll be ENERGY STAR certified. So one of the things that we do as a standard construction feature is we use foam. We don't use bad insulation. So coming from a national home builder before I came to EG, they used bad insulation, and using foam, there's absolutely no comparison. As far as there's no drafts, it stays warmer in the winter, it stays cooler in the summer, it's quieter, and it saves on energy dollars. So at EG, part of our brand is that we feel a responsibility to drive down energy costs. So that's one reason we take the route down using foam, and there's other things that we do as well. But this is also, I'll point out, it's a proven offering. So it's won a couple of Hobie Awards for its design, the way it looks. And the reason I point that out is that I see a lot of times builders come in and they get approved and they use prototype product, stuff that's never been tested before. So after a couple months of no sales, they have to revise everything, and they have to come back before the commission for revised site plan, revised footprints, whatever it may be. So because we're using something that's proven, it's no different than the amenity, right? We know that works, we're going to use it again. Well, this has been very successful for several years up at the Chatfield Farms community. So it's less likely we'll have to come back. We feel like this really hits the market, it hits the segment that we know is looking for housing down along the shore in Connecticut. If you want to see more of this, you can go to our website, which is eghome.net, hit communities, Chatfield Farms, and there's all kinds of marketing, there's elevations and floor plans there as well. Next slide, please. So these are some of the exteriors. This is from our Chatfield Farms community. So if you can kind of envision taking these and stringing them together, it speaks to what I'm talking about. It speaks to the diversity along the streetscape. So you've got this massing up and down. Each unit feels different with a different elevation, a different floor plan. We alternate between one-story and two-story homes. And I think I got one more slide, right? Okay, so these are some interiors from not only Chatfield Farms, but also Perkins Reserve. And the reason I put this in here is I wanted to make the point that EG Home is a full-service builder. So we've got an office in Southbury. We've got 20 employees there, actually in Southbury and spread out throughout Connecticut. And every person that buys a home from us goes to our design studio in Southbury where they meet with a design consultant and they shepherd them through this process of selecting all their colors. So all of our cabinet samples, everything is there. So we really feel like it adds to the whole customer experience. So we handle our customers from cradle to grave, however you want to word it, so we can control the process, keep the process moving. I think that's it. Okay.
Thank you, Chris. Let me just finish up my presentation with just a little bit of review of the regulation and your charge tonight. Your open space development regulations provide you direction on how to evaluate such an application, and actually certain findings you should make under section 6.6.22.8. We believe we meet or we far exceed those requirements and those findings, but we would submit the following for your consideration and for the record tonight. This open space development promotes a less sprawling and a more efficient form of development. It consumes less open land. It conforms to existing topography and natural features far better than a conventional subdivision, and certainly better than even the attached housing project that was approved on this site a decade ago. Our internal arrangement of private roads, driveways, the emergency access road will not adversely impact any traffic patterns in the surrounding area or emergency vehicle access. And again, we believe it's superior to the existing design. The number, the type, the density of the dwelling units conforms to the zoning regulations, but we also think it's more compatible with the surrounding single-family neighborhood. The ownership provisions for the open space that we're adding into this project will require the homeowners association to hold title and manage it, and that doesn't result in any undue burden to the town. The layout that we've provided promotes the permanent preservation of open space, and it adds to the significant dedications that have already been made. We have water and sewer approvals from the necessary local agencies. And finally, the project complies with the goals and objectives of the Plan of Conservation and Development. This area of the town is designated for medium-density housing. This is certainly a medium-density residential project. It's served by public water and sewer, which is a requirement for medium-density housing. And we also address the issue of preservation of open space and protection of the character of our surrounding neighborhoods. So with that, I want to thank you for your time and attention this evening. I know I've tried to go at sort of at a high level and really open the floor to you and the public for any questions or any comments. We're going to remain available if you have any specific questions on anything, and certainly we reserve a right of rebuttal. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Bill. Mike? Now we're on. So let's, hopefully everybody's signed up who wants to speak. We'll go with the public comments first before we get into our board questions, if that's all right with you. So anyone in favor, opposed, general comments? Thank you, Keith. Carlene, you're first up. Surprise.
For the record, my name is Carlene Donarumo. I live in Pawcatuck, and I was very familiar with the project that was approved previously. I knew exactly what they were talking about. Probably most of you didn't, but that's okay. I do want to talk to you about something that I'm observing with this commission, and that is allowing applicants to come before you before they are truly ready. We had what I think Keith called round 3 for the last one. This one was put on the agenda before everything was settled and done, to the point now that we have 27 comments by the town engineer that have not been addressed. And in my opinion, and as a resident of this town, the way we're doing business, I feel that those items should have been addressed before you got here, not with 27 that the town engineer has to take time to take care of. And I believe that was also not that specific, but letting them on the agenda before they're truly ready was mentioned by another member of our community at the previous hearing. It's something I really think you need to think about. Secondly, I want to talk a little bit about the stipulations of approval. And these would probably be addressed by our planner. The zoning enforcement officer had 5 comments. One, which was the town engineer has to approve everything, but the other 4, I'm wondering why they are not part of the stipulations of approval. It would seem to me these things can get lost in the shuffle. This project is not going to be built in a day, a year, maybe 2 or 3 years. 42 houses is a lot. We're already on 2 years for a 3-lot subdivision across from me. So I kind of feel that those zoning officials' comments should be part of the stipulations of approval. And number 13 of the planner's report refers to the westerly water approval prior to assuming any zoning permits for construction. But there's absolutely no mention in this approval or stipulation about the 8-inch main that they have to put in the road from Mark Street to Mary Hall Road. Now that's a major thing that has to happen with this approval and with this application. To me, I think it should be included in the stipulation. And lastly, I have some questions for the attorney. There's this thing in there, and I couldn't understand it about .9. He didn't even mention it, but it had to do amount of land associated with on the area. What I really want to know is, I know these people are owning the condo, they own the building, but they don't own any of the land individually. But I'm wondering how much space each lot would be considered your space if you own this condo. 1. Number 2, Mr. Sweeney mentioned about visitor parking. He didn't say anything about where they were or how many they were. I was a big proponent in our town when we were doing attached regulations to have plenty of room for visitors. People entertain. You've got to have 42 lots there, and people have birthday parties, anniversary parties, Christmas parties, Thanksgiving Day. Where are these people going to park? And it seemed to me, I think I heard the word slab. So does that mean, question number 3, Mr. Attorney, that there will have no cellar to these homes? And finally, I assume that because they are condos, is there going to be a monthly maintenance fee for these people? I think I kind of heard something like that, but it really wasn't stated very, very loudly. So hopefully Mr. Sweeney can answer the questions, and I would ask that you seriously consider adding those 2 things about the water main that has to be added and the zoning officials' comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Carleen. Rick Newton. You want to do the rebuttal all at once at the end? Is that all right? Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Rick Newton, Meadowbrook Lane, Mystic. While I appreciate what they're trying to do, and it is a less intensive development, I don't think the open space regulations are the appropriate vehicle to get this approved. The attorney talked about the purpose of the open space, and he mentioned, development while conserving land. If you read the purpose in the zoning regulations, it's all about conservation. And the development is secondary. And so, the emphasis on open space developments, we seem to be getting away from it. The only true one that I think was approved was the Olivia Lane one, where 46 acres were given to the Avalone Land Conservancy, and then they put in a cul-de-sac with about 7 or 8 houses. We're getting further and further away from the intent of the open space regulations. One thing that they don't meet is that the open space has to be contiguous. The open space that they're putting aside in that middle area does not qualify as open space. There is a provision in the regulations that you can waive that if the Conservation Commission recommends it. I don't see anything in the planning report where it even went to the Conservation Commission, which surprises me, because you would think that open space development would go to the Conservation Commission. The landscape is supposed to be preserved in its natural state, and they talked about the areas that are going to be preserved and the areas that are going to be developed. I'd like to know how much of that development is actual, how much is going to be preserved in its natural state. There's going to be construction areas in the open space, it looks like, from what they said was their cutting area. Normally in an open space development, that doesn't happen. If you look at the open space map, that pink map, the open space goes right up to the back of each of those patios, and it goes up to the side wall of one of the units. You're going to tell me that a homeowners association is going to enforce conservation traits to that open space? I don't think so. So it just doesn't seem like open space regulations should be used for this development. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Mark Bancroft.
Good evening, Mark Bancroft, 81 Mary Hall Road in Pawcatuck, obviously. And I'm directly affected by this. When I first heard of the first approval, I was kind of shocked. I was talking with my neighbors, didn't know about it when I bought the property in 2016. When I was approached by Mr. Bennett, so he came, knocked on my door, said, hey, this is what we want to do, what do you think? I thought about it. I had concerns. I had 3 major concerns. One was, okay, you're going to blast like hell right above my house, and I have a rock basement, 102-year-old house, so I had concerns about that. I have an extremely shallow well. It's only 64 feet deep. And so I had concerns about that, considering that they were going to be working up and near the wetlands that feed my well. And thirdly, my main concern was increased traffic on Mary Hall. And so after discussing with Mr. Bennett and later at a meeting that they held for all of the neighbors at one of the local hotels, I think we got it pretty straight as to what we were looking for, at least myself, and when the submission came in, I was pleased to see that they had increased the area in the stipulation that's been talked about for blasting to include my property and that of many, many more of the neighbors, and that they included the well inspections and things of that nature. So that was very good. I've heard their traffic numbers, and I've had the police put one of those little radar things up that flashes right there at the entrance to the project, and they got some pretty staggering numbers, if you would believe. In a 20-day period, 22,000 cars on Mary Hall Road. And I have Captain Olson gave me the thing, breaks it down by hour. And so, but anyway, increased with the new project, increase would be a little less than 10% on a daily basis if you figure 1.5 cars per house. So I'm kind of okay with that. I'm fully in support of the project, only because, one, I think it's a good project. I think it will fit well with the neighborhood, and it does increase conservation. I mean, let's face it, there is an approved project on file, and that project is more intrusive to the conservation, both of the open space, to the amount of cars, the amount of people, everything. This project is less intrusive, and it may not meet all of the little nuances, but I think overall it is extremely more conservative. So I'd like to see you recommend it and approve it.
Thank you, sir. Tim Griggs.
On stage. My general feeling is more aesthetic. The lots are so narrow that every single house is going to have garage doors in the front of it. And it would have been nice if the lots were varied, maybe some lots 100 and maybe some lots 150. So some of those garages could be on the side of the building, and you weren't going to be driving by 42 houses looking at 42 garage doors in front of you. And I'm assuming that these are going to be basically vinyl sided and plastic trim. Is that the plan for the?
I don't know yet. We can find out for you.
Okay. I think it's a great improvement over the first plan that Sharenza was planning. I like the fact that it's downsized and there are a lot fewer people are going to be residing here. But I wish the lots had a little bit of more character to them, just to add to the feature of having not all the garage doors facing the street. And that's pretty much my only concern.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Tim. Maureen Kavanaugh.
Hi, my name is Maureen Kavanaugh, and I live in Pawcatuck. I have just some questions, I think, and some concerns. The concern I have is about the blasting, because a lot of us do have wells around the area and stuff like that. So I'm interested in when the blasting is going to happen, and how the neighbors are going to be informed outside of that blasting area that you have too. So that's one of my concerns. I have a question about what are the price of the houses going to be approximately, and from what I understand, of the 42 houses, there are only going to be 4 different designs. Am I correct in that?
We'll find out.
Okay. And then oh, I had a question too on the Crescent Club, that development. How long were those plans, how long do the plans stay active for? In other words, I thought it was like they only stayed active for like 2 years or 3 years or something like that. I'm surprised that it was 10 years ago and those plans are still active today. So that's a question I have. And
I believe the state is up that to 19 years.
19 years?
Yeah, basically till 2026, and they can request an additional either 4 or 5 years from the commission after that.
Okay, thank you. And then, when was the traffic study done, that we were referring to? And, I think that's it. I think those are the questions I had. Also, I understand there's 33 and a half acres of, open land. Am I correct on that? Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Maureen. And we'll get to these questions all at the end with the applicant. Francis Slater?
Hi, I'm Fran Slater. I live directly across from the proposed building area on Greenhaven Road. I don't know if I'm talking into this enough. And I have just a couple questions and concerns. You talked about a temporary building road that will be gravel. Where exactly is that going to come out across from Schiller, where the original road was going to, one of the original roads in was going to be? And will that continue to stay gravel in that area, or will it be eventually changed? The 7 lots off Greenhaven Road that you're going to leave as forested, is it going to be the same foresting that's there right now, just thickets and sparse trees and who knows what, or is it going to be thinned out and made to look different and decent?
You're talking about on Greenhaven Road?
On Greenhaven
Okay,
Road.
we'll find out that too.
Okay. And I'm wondering approximately when will they start? I mean, obviously they've got to bring huge equipment in, and it's already had like mowing devices go in 3 or 4 different times to take different samples of whatever they're taking. I don't know. But I'm wondering when the actual startup date might be. And there's talk about condos. These houses, are they considered condos, or are they privately owned homes in a community setting with the community land care and whatnot? So those are my questions. As far as blasting goes, if they're not going to be building on the 7 road frontages on Greenhaven, is it still 50 foot from the blast area, or is it, I mean, I'm thinking about my well and my septic system and so on. Mm-hmm. Can I have some better definition on that, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure the pronunciation of the first name, but a Bonebacker? Bonebacker? Forgive me.
You did very well.
And how do I pronounce your first name?
Sager.
I would have blown that.
So for the record, I'm Sager Bonebacher. I live on 413 Greenhaven Road with my wife, right next to the site and next to the 7 lots that are going to remain forest land. I don't have a lot to add, so I won't take up a lot of your time. I just wanted to emphasize that from the very start, E.G. Home, Chris Bennett in particular, has been very communicative. He's reached out to us and explained the plans of his company, which was a welcome change from previous practice. My wife and I are very pleased about the fact that there is going to be more open space and that the whole project is going to be less intrusive than the previous version. And the fact, of course, that it's downsized considerably. But I think We're also pleased that this project is much more in keeping with the character of the neighborhood than the previous one. And something that I haven't heard anything about today, but I would like to hear about it again, though, is that you're extending your offer of doing testing on wells, etc., to anyone within a certain radius who would like to have their well tested. Is that correct? Other than that, I mean, the traffic, I'm surprised to hear that there are 22,000 cars within a 20-day period, but I would assume that the overall effect on traffic is going to be very limited, but I would like to hear some figures, some specific figures. That was it for me. I mean, all in all, I'm very pleased that this project is poised to replace the previous one. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Again, the signature's a little off. Michael, not McFadden, but almost something like that. Sorry, Michael. I got Michael.
Hi, I'm Mike McFadden. I live at 51 Mary Hall Road. At least right now, my wife and I bought that property in August last year, and we were aware of the Crescent Club development. You know, those are plans are on file. One concern, though, we have with the new proposal, and it definitely seems better. I mean, there's less density. You know, it's like a third less. But there's no access now to Green Haven, so all the traffic has got to come and go through Mary Hall, which is a major connector road. We heard a count of the cars. I don't know if the traffic takes into account pedestrians, but there's a lot of people riding bikes, walking, and jogging along Mary Hall Road. So originally, we thought, well, geez, some of that traffic is going to go out Green Haven. I mean, because they're not going to need to go get on Mary Hall. But now everybody has to go on Mary Hall, so that's kind of a problem for us. I think because of the way the road is situated, we're going to suffer light pollution on a regular basis. Every car turning in, every car leaving is going to strafe my house with light. Every single car that leaves that project. Half of them turning in are going to blast me, and the other half are going to blast my neighbor. So I would think and hope that the board could somehow condition this as your special permit in a way that some light mitigation, effective light mitigation measures are taken. I talked with Chris about it, you know, some structure and maybe some planting to hide the structures. It's hard to tell until the elevations are done and the roads are in, but that's a problem for me and my neighbors. I have that comment, and the other one I'm concerned about is I noticed sidewalks aren't a big thing in Stonington, but I noticed he had sidewalks in part of the project, but not the entire project. And I'm sorry, I think that the board has a responsibility to consider the safety of the future residents. Forcing pedestrians and cars to use the same road is just short-sighted. Just simply short-sighted. Kids, bikes, people. I think there should be sidewalks in that development, especially if the houses are going to be that tight. Kids coming out quickly. You know, I mean, you're not going to have a lot of sight time between, you know, driveways. So I think the board, two conditions to sum it up. I would really like sidewalks and the whole thing. I think that's in the public's interest, and some type of effective light mitigation measures be required of the developer so that I don't get strafed by headlights every time somebody's leaving.
And where's your house exactly?
I'm at 51 Mary Hall Road. I'm right there in the corner.
On the corner of
where they want to come in.
To the entrance?
The entrance, right.
Okay.
So half of all the people, you know, making a left off of River Road going into this development those lights are gonna blast my house. And the way the road is situated coming out of there, everybody leaving is gonna, the lights will strafe my house. And my abutter has a similar situation. He'll get it from the other side. So I think that could be addressed by the board as a condition with the special permit, should you decide to grant it, and I would urge you to do so. Lastly, I just want to thank all you guys. I was a town official in Brimfield for 25 years, went to a ton of meetings. Everybody gives up something to do this. It's not for the pay, it's not for the glory, it's kind of, you know, it's a tough job. I did zoning for a long time in the town of Brimfield. So I just thank you for being willing to donate your time to make sure that the public's interest is considered. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Just one question. I
Certainly.
realize it's kind of, just one question. Would you, the light mitigation thing it seems like a reasonable request. Would you work with the developer to do something on your property in terms of planting on your property? If that were a practical way to resolve this?
Absolutely. I talked to Chris about it. Maybe some structure, some plantings. Who knows? There's going to be rocks coming out of there. There may be a way to, you know, and when the road gets cut in.
My point is, would you work with him with something on your property?
I would certainly work with something to be installed on our property to mitigate that light.
Some sort of screening.
Some sort of screening.
A buffer, some sort of planted buffer.
Trees or
And I
wall.
think the other parcels on Mary Hall kind of have a similar issue. I know one of my neighbors does. You know, the screening is going to be required in order to avoid that. That's all.
Yep.
Understood. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes. Oh, we have one more. Maureen.
I forgot to ask a question before. Especially the property we're talking about on Greenhaven Road, is that open space? Is that considered open space property? And then the other question is, can anything be built after these 42 housing units are put up? Can anything else be built there, or is that a done deal for this area? And nothing else can be built on that property? I'm just questioning.
Good question. All right, Mr. Sweeney, you have quite a laundry list here to answer, too.
I've been doing this kind of stuff for a long time, so I tried to grab everybody's comments, and if I miss one,
I
my
wrote them down.
apologies. It's certainly not intentional.
We'll see how we do.
First speaker, Carlene, she had indicated that she was concerned that our application was not ready at the last hearing, and I think the commission needs to understand many times review comments come literally days before your actual meeting. There are statutory timelines to set public hearing dates, and those review comments may come after the date has already been set, and that certainly was the situation with the engineer comments. So there were 17 engineer comments. Most of them were very, very minor, sort of add this detail, add this note, but that was a big part of why I requested the delay, because we weren't ready, because we wanted to address those and not come with 17 comments. There is an email that should be in the file from your town engineer that have whittled that down to 4 comments as of today, and I think 3 of those 4 comments are new comments. There are comments that the engineer brought up after the fact. So again, we only had them for a couple days, but they're minor comments. They're all achievable and addressable. And so it's not 17 comments we're asking for. It's just what's outstanding. So I would just make that point on the record. Carlene asked a question about how residents own their common areas. So in Connecticut, people use the word condominiums a lot, but the Condominium Act is not an act that's actually still in effect here in Connecticut. We have what's called the Common Interest Community Act, and that includes a whole bunch of different types of arrangements of people living together on the same parcel or parcels of land. This would be a common interest community, and the definition of the unit, what you would buy, would be the inner walls of your units that you're actually buying, similar to traditional old-style condominiums. Outside of the walls of the project, those areas are clearly common areas. That doesn't mean you don't own them. You actually own a percentage share in all of that. You own the outside around your unit, you own the outside around your neighbor's units. You're responsible collectively for their maintenance and upkeep and to maintain them. You put money in on a regular basis. I've worked on projects where you can define things like limited common elements, where people have a little bit more privacy or control over those areas. I'm not sure if we've even gotten to that point on this project. It's something that's usually later down the road. But certainly, those common areas are owned by the people who live there. They're not owned by some developer. They're owned by the actual parties. And when the association is turned over to the parties, they get to self-govern and make rules and regulations as well. Carlene asked about visitor parking. Can we go to the overall site plan? And I apologize, Carlene, I was just moving quickly, but I want to show, because I think your point is a good one. That's perfect right there. Yeah, if you could just show, we have, as I said before, each building unit will have a minimum of 2 garage spaces. So you have 42 units, 2 garage spaces, that's 84 parking spaces. We have 105 on the plan, so we have 21 surface spaces, and they're located in 2 locations on the plan. There are some by the pavilion, and then there are some in sort of off to the left. There are some, see if you can maybe point to them, there are some as well, and we have handicap spaces in there as well. I would also point out we have driveways leading into each of these units as well. So we're not even counting that, but there's spaces for people to park in the driveway leading to the building. So for the concern about parties, for visitors, I don't think there's any concern. We've clearly addressed that issue with our plans. We have full basements in these units. And depending on topography, some of them might be walkout basements, depending on how the buildings will lay out and the particular style that's chosen, but these are full basements for these units. Rick Newton said that the development under the open space regulations is secondary. Development is secondary to the conservation. Rick and I don't agree on much, and we don't agree on this issue either. Certainly the open space regulations have a balance between development and open space. The whole concept of the open space regulation is to give the developer the flexibility to get economic return on a property in return for preserving open space. We're certainly doing that. We're doing that in the earlier iterations of the plan and the additional open space that we're adding. Rick mentions that the open space is supposed to be contiguous, and it is, but there's also a provision that allows contiguous open space to include open space that's separated by roads and driveways. So we do have a central area that we're choosing, and if you can see, we have open space leading up to both sides of the road. It's not directly across, but it's certainly within close proximity to it. And we definitely are counting that central area. The open space regulations do not require it to be natural area. It just has to be made available for passive or active recreation. The big provision is you can't have structures in the open space area, and we're not proposing that. So we're consistent with the regulations. Mark Bancroft, thank you for your comments, sir. We certainly tried to make sure that the pre-blast survey included property and well survey, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. Mr. Griggs commented about he didn't like the size of the lots. I want to make clear on the record, we're not proposing lots. This is a common interest community. So you're going to own your house, and the area outside your house is going to be common space. I recognize that he doesn't like seeing garages. This is a private community. These are private roads. You can drive into them, but I think most houses have garages on the front of them. Some of them are sort of obnoxious, put out way out front, some are to the side, but you usually can see a garage from the front facade of a building. I don't think that that's unusual. In terms of materials, we do use high quality vinyl. We don't use just standard straight vinyl. We use textured vinyl. We use shake. We use board and batten. We have the highest quality vinyl on our products. They last and they look good, and they're indistinguishable from wood at a distance. You literally have to go up and touch them to realize what they are, and that's what the quality of the product is today. Ms. Kavanaugh had a number of items, and I'm going to try to get to...
Excuse me, Bill, what is the trim made out of then? He had two questions, the siding and the trim.
It's PVC or wrapped aluminum.
Okay, thank you.
So on the blasting, I showed a plan. Maybe we can go back to that plan. Yeah. So what we committed to, we tried to mirror the stipulated judgment, but the stipulated judgment was really just between the plaintiffs and the developer. What we did is expanded our pre-blast survey promises to anyone within a certain distance. So it didn't matter whether you were one of the plaintiffs in the original appeal or not. And I think we had a gentleman get up and say that he really appreciated that. So this is on the site plan. It's also in the conditions, the proposed conditions approval. The developer, we are committing to do a pre-blast survey of any structure within 500 feet of the outer perimeter of the boundary of the project. We're also, upon request, willing to do that within 1,500 feet for any structure, which I think is a pretty significant offer on our part. We are also willing to do a pre-blast and post, and that includes a post-blast survey if there's any issues that occur. We're also willing, have committed to do pre-blast and post-blast surveys for potable wells for properties within 500 feet of the outside corner of the outside perimeter of the property. Again, consistent with what the settlement was. There are other requirements. We can go through them if you want, but for example, we have to have plans that are approved by the fire marshal. We have to have seismographic monitoring of the blasting. We have to have a blast vibration consultant look at and review those seismographic results, make any changes that are necessary. We've got to have a licensed blaster doing the work. We are going to notify the town of Stonington Police Department and to all neighboring property owners who request such notice.
So how would a citizen get that request?
We're happy to have that go through Keith's department, or we can give our contact information to Keith and they can forward it on.
All your blasting is going to be contained to a certain time frame. You're trying to get it all done at once.
Yeah, this is a single phase project. We're going to try to do it as quickly as possible, and it's really those two dark areres on the plan are the two areas where our geotech has identified that we're going to need to blast.
And there are certain hours, I think they were stipulated
there.
Correct?
Well, we have this fire marshal has requirements for blasting, and we're required to follow their rules for that. No explosives are stored on site during non-work hours, and I think the big thing is we've got to be bonded up to $7 million for potential damage. So these are significant things. These are not the kind of provisions you find in a normal planning and zoning approval. And this was not something the town put on us. It was a commitment of the developer, who was not the party, not the defendant in the original lawsuit. But we said, we're buying this. We're going to hold true to the promises that the old owner made.
I had one, while we're on blasting, if you don't mind. How much height is being removed, roughly? I mean, you're talking like 4 feet here and there, or 20 feet here and there? I just was curious. I couldn't tell by the original elevation.
We'll need to take a look for a second and just do a quick calculation. I'm going to let my engineer tonight do a quick calc. I'll get back to you on that one.
And can I ask also then, kind of a contiguous to that question, what will be done with what's blasted? I mean, is that going to be spread across the property? Is that going to be spread across the property, or taken off the property, or how would that be handled?
So with rock blasting.
Just put your name for the record.
Matt Gilchrist, I'm the owner of EG Home. Anytime we do rock blasting, we process that material to be used on site. So that same rock that we take out of those two areas will end up being the stone that goes in the footings. It'll be the process in the roads. It'll be the material that we backfill with, and it'll be crushed and screened into appropriate material to be used for those purposes.
Okay, thank you.
And that was a condition of the original approval, because neighbors were concerned at the time that, there'd be trucks full of rocks, going out all day.
No, they're extensive stipulations.
There's a question asked about blasting notifications.
Yes.
One of the individuals that spoke wanted to know how abutters are going to be notified. I guess it's people that are within the 500-foot radius. what kind of notification procedure is going to be used?
I think once we have our schedule for blasting, and again, I'm jumping ahead to some other questions we're going to answer, we expect a start if everything goes as
Are
planned.
you still answering questions? Because if you are, I won't ask these.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I've got quite a few more if that's
sorry.
okay. But I will answer that question. Ms. Kavanaugh asked about prices. Certainly not a zoning issue, but we're happy to say that we expect that these homes will sell in excess of $500,000, probably in the $600,000 range. I think they're very similar to what we're done at Chatham Farms, which is about $580,000. So that's probably the price point, which is significantly higher than the multifamily units that were being proposed previously. We have 4 different floor plans. I think we said this already, but Ms. Kavanaugh asked about how many different designs we have. We've got 4 different floor plans, and then we have about 3 different elevations for each floor plan. So we have a lot of variety and combinations that could be made for the individual units. The traffic study that was done was conducted, the data that was collected was done in 2022, earlier this spring and summer. There is about, in total, when you take the land that was preserved previously and the land we're preserving now, there's somewhere in the vicinity of about 35 acres of protected open space out of the 50 total, give or take. And the last question that Ms. Kavanaugh asked later in the public session was Greenhaven. That area is going to be left in its natural state. The town of Stonington has provisions for preservation of open space in draft language that allows a property owner or a responsible party to go in and remove dangerous deadfall and things like that. But we don't expect, this is not manicured space, this is not planted space, this is not landscape space. This is going to be left in its natural state unless there's something that's dangerous that we have to take care of. And most importantly, though, that area, because we're designating it open space in this plan, if this project's approved, then the answer to her question is it will not be developed in the future. You can't put anything in there. As I said before, the regulations are very clear that structures are not allowed in any designated open space area. Ms. Slater asked a number of questions. The emergency access road, I don't know if it's, can you go to the general layout? Right there. So the emergency access road goes out and hits Greenhaven exactly where the private road that was supposed to be full access in the last iteration was. There's no change in the location. It's across from Schiller Avenue. It will stay gravel. It's not to be used for regular access. There will be a fire gate installed there, which will have like a Knox box on it for emergency personnel. This is not a road that residents can travel in and out of. This is for in case of a fire or an emergency, something gets blocked, gives an opportunity to get into the project. Otherwise, I would say 99.9% of the time that gate will be closed. I already talked about it being natural areas, our allowances for removing deadfall, but these are, the open space areas are not areas that we're going to go in and manicure. There was a question about the start time and when the notice. We expect, if everything goes as planned, that we'll be starting at the end of Q1 of 2023, a spring construction start. Once we have our construction documents prepared, we're ready to break ground, we'll have a timeline for the blaster, we'll meet with the town, and we can organize with Keith's department the notice situation. If you want us to send letters out, we're happy to do that to the people within a certain radius. We can do that if that's what you'd like. We had indicated in our general notes that anyone who wants to be notified when we start, we'll notify them, but we're totally flexible on that point. Question about a common interest community, what does that mean? I think I've described that and how it works already. And I've explained that the pre-blast surveys for both structures and wells extend out 500 feet from the outer perimeter of the property. If you're within 500 to 1,500 feet and you'd like us to do a pre-blast survey on request, you can do so as a property owner. Again, trying to be fair, not just to the plaintiffs of the original appeal, but just to the entire neighborhood. Gentlemen, and I'm really sorry. Is it Mr. Bonabacher? I'm glad I asked you because I heard something completely different. I appreciate your comments, noting that this project is clearly less intrusive. I think we've talked about distances of the blasting review. He asked me for actual numbers on traffic, so let me give you those to you. Here are the changes in trips between the AM peak, the PM peak, and the Saturday midday peak. So the AM peak in the old project was 43 trips coming and going from the site. Under the new design, it's 34 trips. In the PM peak, the old plan had 51 trips coming and going from the site, 44 under the new plan. And then the Saturday midday I said was slightly higher. It was 39 in the old plan, 46 in the new plan. But again, all very close before. But most important thing though is that the intersection at Mary Hall Lane continues to function at a level A level of service, as does the intersection of Greenhaven and Mary Hall just up the street. Finally, Mr. McFadden's comments. Certainly all the traffic does go to Mary Hall Road. The other connection to Greenhaven is emergency. I respect the fact that he's not pleased with that, but I think our traffic report, our testimony provided in that report by our traffic engineer says there's absolutely no safety or level of service or capacity issue with using that access point at the end of the day. I would point out as well is that driveway that comes out to Mary Hall is in the exact same location as the driveway that was approved 10 years ago in the previous iteration of the plan. I would say that there has been communication with Mr. McFadden's wife, I believe, Donna McFadden, and Chris Bennett from E.G. Home as recently as July 18th. He had expressed concern, just to make sure that we're all aware of what property we're talking about.
Yeah, I'd like clarification on that.
Sure. This is the McFadden property here, all right?
And one thing I'm not sure is clear until you really study the plan is that driveway, there's a retaining wall either side of that entranceway.
Exactly. So
how high is that retaining wall?
Yeah, I think at its highest point it tails down and it comes up to about 4.5 feet and then it tails down again. But that point is really important, is that we have a retaining wall along that property line. And so what we indicated in the email of July 18th to Mr. McFadden is we are more than happy to provide some screening material, but we don't have any room to do so. We have a very narrow access point. If we were given a 10-foot planting easement on his property along that, we could plant additional shrubs and vegetation there to provide him some screening from possible lights. And we're more than happy to do that for you, but we need his cooperation on that point. I would also point out on the other side of the roadway where there is the detention basin in front of that lot, we already have an agreement in place with that property owner to do plantings on his property. There's something that he asked for early on and we've already addressed it with him. Did I miss anything?
No, I have
Sidewalks?
Well, hang on.
Sidewalks.
Hang on. Yeah. I have an idea. What would happen if you spun your Mary Hall basin 90 degrees?
We can't. That basin is,
built?
it was conveyed as an easement, and so its location is set.
Okay, never mind. Thank you.
Good question, though.
Sidewalks?
Yeah. So we have a sidewalk leading from the Central Green down to Mary Hall Road. We are not proposing sidewalks along Mary Hall Road. We have literally no frontage on Mary Hall Road at this point except for the entrance. The other frontage has been already conveyed out. We're not proposing any sidewalks along Greenhaven Road because that area is open space all the way up to the town right-of-way.
How about on the road, the internal road itself?
So we have a sidewalk leading up from Mary Hall Lane.
I can see where it is.
Yep. But we did not propose it for the circle going around the project because we have that central green area. The whole idea was to create a community that didn't need a sidewalk. People would congregate in the center area. It's very low traffic flows, very few houses on that area. We thought that the pavilion, the sidewalks around the pavilion, and we would added the sidewalk out to Mary Hall at the request of staff, but we're not, those are the only sidewalks we're proposing.
How about children walking to a school bus stop? I mean, they're gonna walk in the road?
No, there is a sidewalk from the center green all the way down to Mary Hall. That's the only road that has any access.
Not adjacent to each house? Right.
No, you would walk out your driveway and then walk along the gutter line of the private road.
Well, the school bus probably wouldn't come down there on the
No,
private
it
road.
probably would not.
So that's going to be quite a congestion point when the school bus stops on Mary Hall?
Well, I think the question though too is, you know, how many children do you expect out of this development?
Right.
Based on our target market. Will there be some? Possibly, but it's going to be a very small number. Sure. Just put your name into the record.
Okay. Matt Gilchrist, EG Home. We build this very similar product in Chatfield Farms, and we proposed it in a couple other developments that we have on the docket. But we found in Chatfield Farms that we took it over from another developer. That developer failed in 2008. And then we bought it in 2012. When we came back into that development, it's a development of 231 active adult homes. The first thing they asked me to do was to remove the sidewalks in areas of the community that were undeveloped. Because typically you're going to want a 4-foot sidewalk. Two people can't comfortably walk next to each other on a 4-foot sidewalk. So what happens is you're taking up a large portion of the front lawns of these homes, and unfortunately only on one side usually, and you still have everybody walking in the road. This is not a thoroughfare. That's one of the benefits with removing the access to Greenhaven is people will not be cutting through here. The only people that are going to be driving in here are the 42 homeowners that live there. So they're going to drive at a posted speed limit, probably 15, maybe 20 miles an hour on a section of it, but it'll probably be more like a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit in there.
How wide are the roads?
I was wondering that too.
Yeah, and actually I was going to ask, with the width of the roads, is there a lighting plan for around the roads, the circle, and all the way going down to the intersection?
Yeah, there is a lighting plan as well. So our lighting standards are less than 20 feet. We have a photometric plan that shows the light spillage. It doesn't affect any of the unit locations. I don't know if I have that slide to display, but it is in the package as well. And let me just get a dimensionality for you. 24 feet for the private road design, which is the same pavement width as a public road. Were you?
As much as I'm normally in favor of sidewalks as well, I do think that this project is a little unique in the fact that anybody, most likely if you're walking in there, it's because you live there. And if you live there, you partially own all of everybody's yards. So I would think that walking on the grass would be less of an issue there.
Good point.
I just wanted to answer a question that was deferred, and we just taking a look at some existing topo and proposed. We look like the biggest cuts in the areas of the ledge removal is about 10 feet.
10?
Now that varies because that ledge is not always equal and even,
I understand that.
but that's give or take.
I don't think it's practical either to put sidewalks in here. I'm looking at the setbacks of the houses from and what you've said is true. The distance from the curb to the front of the house is almost nothing. So you put a tree belt in there and then a 4-foot sidewalk, and the sidewalk's going to be within 4 feet of the house.
And we didn't want to push the units. We didn't want to push the units back toward the perimeter of the property to create more front lawn space, because all that would do was eat into that open space strip that we have.
Where you do have sidewalks, you push the houses back further.
We did, and that was at the request of staff to put that sidewalk down, just in case you had something like a school-age child that needed to go down and get the bus.
Okay. Staff input?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to back up and reiterate some of the stuff here, when it comes to scheduling our hearings, you know, when we get an application, we have to treat them as live bombs because of the time frame and the state statute, so we have to schedule the public hearings. It often does take time to review them, so we can't wait until we get to that point that everything is addressed before scheduling it. And our town engineer is great, and he's very detailed, so sometimes he might have 17 comments, but when you look at them, they are, smaller things that could easily be addressed, and sometimes not, but that's often the case. The zoning official's comments that she mentioned are actually not her own comments, they're the stipulations put on by the Inland Wetlands Commission.
That wasn't clear in the report, that I figured that out too, that's from the
Okay.
Wetlands Commission from June 2nd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those will be printed on the plan, and those will have to be adhered to
Great.
before they develop. This development was approved by the Conservation Commission on July 25th. I neglected to put that in the report, but they recommended approval and generally thought it was an improvement over the previous one. Let's see.
How about the water condition, Keith?
Yeah. So, when proposed developments go before Westerly Water, they often have their consulting engineer review them to see if they have enough capacity and to see if there's the necessary fire flow, so there's enough pressure to fight fires there. So Westerly Water sent that to their consulting engineer. They came back and said that there is the capacity there and they can meet the fire flows, but that the applicants will have to either replace a water line through a section of River Road or add a second water line next to the existing one and connect it at certain points. And the details of that would still have to be established. But that would just have to be done before the development could proceed, or it would have to be approved.
Could I add something to this? There is a Westerly Water approval condition included. It's condition number 13.
Right.
And one of the parties that spoke from the public mentioned something that I would usually go along with, and that is a specific stipulation on the water conditions. I think we have to be careful here, and we have to be careful because the town has received a $1.9 million grant for work in Greenhaven Road and Mary Hall Road to connect the two independent loops that are now deadhead water main out there. And that's going to create a loop where there presently isn't a loop now. And it substantially enhances both pressure and volume out there and might alleviate the need for that extra pipe in the final assessment. So I think we've got to be careful that we leave this just as it is, because Westerly Water is going to be the determinator there. Westerly Water runs the model, Westerly Water owns the system, and Westerly Water will ultimately decide what the developer has to do to meet the necessary fire flow requirements. So there is a condition on water. I think it's worded appropriately given the fact that the town has got a grant and everybody's still assessing how that loop is going to affect pressure and volume and what the developer has to do. But they're not being let off the hook. They're going to have to do whatever they have to do to meet the necessary fire flow requirements. So I do think that the way this was worded carefully to take those things into consideration. Credit to you, Carleen. You wouldn't know that unless I offered these details. So that's a sort of an emerging situation with respect to what's going on with the water main out there. I was part of the team that looked at this, and we worked very closely with C&E Engineering. This was way before this project came on the horizon. We've been working on this grant for a couple of years now, and I worked closely with the town engineer to put the grant application together and to work with C&E Engineering. So substantial improvements that will affect the whole area out there, water quality, pressure, and volume coming soon. So, and that will affect what this project has to do too. So I do think this is worded carefully to take that into consideration.
Yeah, and as I think Attorney Sweeney mentioned, there were new comments from the town engineer today in which he reviewed the updated plans and drainage report and says he recommends the commission's action with the final stipulation that the plans be up to his final review And he has, you know, 4 outstanding engineering issues that look pretty detailed here. So as part of this, for development of this size, the zoning regulations require that our department comes up with this, what it calls a conceptual evaluation. It's sort of a report on the feasibility of the development. It's a long document, but the bottom line is there was nothing found that was infeasible about the development, especially considering the comments we got back from other expert reviewers. You know, we mentioned the water issue, no issues with sewer. Got the will serve letter from WPCA. There are some special use permit waiver requests that are asked for. Things like shadow plan, 3D model, flood hazard reports, and there are no flood areas here. School impact evaluation report.
Keith, is there a waiver required on the open space contiguous? There's 2 different opinions that we've heard from the audience. One, that a waiver is required because the open space isn't contiguous.
But let me look at the actual language here.
It seemed like the comments from the town's attorney seemed pretty strongly in favor of considering the previous donation made by the previous owner as applicable to the 50%. I was going to bring that up too, but it seems to be a bit of a moot point in the town attorney's eyes.
I think this is more that central open space not being connected and contiguous. I grant you, I think that there was a very good presentation on open space and where it lies and the volumes of it. I'm just concerned that some specific language was offered that sort of intimated that open space had to be contiguous. And is that a requirement?
Well, what the open space development regulations say is that the open space shall be contiguous. Contiguous shall be defined as being connected with the minimum width at any point of 40 feet. And the Planning and Zoning Commission, upon recommendation of the Conservation Commission, may waive this requirement where it's determined that allowing non-contiguous open space will promote the goals of this regulation and/or protect identified primary and secondary conservation areas. Open space will still be considered contiguous if it's separated by a roadway or driveway. In such instances, a waiver is not necessary.
Did you not say that the Conservation Commission?
The Conservation Commission did recommend approval of it.
Okay. So in essence then, it doesn't have to be all connected.
Correct.
It doesn't have to be all connected. If
Allow for driveways and roadways.
correct.
Yeah, true.
And Conservation did approve this.
Correct.
Right. And this is, when it comes down to it, this is a different case. This is an unusual situation where you have 25 acres or whatever that parcel is owned by the Stonington Land Trust that was deeded by the previous developer.
Right.
So you have all that, and you have the new open space closer to the houses here that's part of this. So it is an unusual situation, that ultimately most people would think makes the original approval better using the open space development tool.
But the Stonington Land Trust land isn't part of their open space
calculation.
Presentation. Yeah.
No, it originally was, but
I know.
I don't
want to bring that up much because now it's not.
Yeah.
Thank you, Keith.
Let's see. So as far as the decisions here, there'd be the decision on the special use permit waivers,
Yep.
decision on the special use permit,
Yep.
and decision on the subdivision application.
Right.
And like Attorney Sweeney said, this isn't a typical subdivision application where someone's carving up lots. In a way, they're combining lots more than, they're combining the ones on Greenhaven. It's more the state statute that says this might be considered a re-subdivision because they are modifying the previous private road and open space. So if the commission approves this, there's a lot of recommended stipulations here, and a lot of them were just carried over from the previous development. And I always go over them just so everyone knows what these stipulations are.
What page are you on, 57?
Page, 57.
Thank you.
So number 1 is language for erosion and sedimentation control bond before development starts. Number 2 is that the applicant's design engineer of record shall provide inspection services to certify construction of the application stormwater management system. Number 3 is just new addresses and lot numbers as assigned by town. Now, number 4 is a lot of stipulations about blasting carried over from the original stipulation that Sherenzia offered up at that time. Mr. Sweeney mentioned that their plan on one of the sheets with general notes lists a lot of blasting stipulations which go a step further. So we might want to modify what I have as number 4 and just say that general blasting notes on sheet GN1 shall be addressed during development.
Are they the same as A through J here?
Well, they're a little different, and that's why. So theirs are basically better than the ones I have here.
That you gave us, okay.
Yeah, they have the larger
Okay. That was
diameter.
mentioned, the 500 and 1,500 feet was mentioned here, too.
Yeah, it's especially in B. What I have is 4B.
Yep.
Where what I have is just the 2 closest wells, and they have all the wells
Right,
within
okay.
a certain distance.
Keith, could I add, or see if we want to consider adding, as part of these blasting stipulations, a communication plan that be drafted with the approval of Keith and between the developer, so that the communication plan to all the residents around, as he
That's an excellent
described,
suggestion.
and approved.
Getting yes nods.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good idea, Ryan.
So I think you're on 5 now, Keith.
Yeah. Number 5 is just development should conform with WPCA's requirements, and I'm paraphrasing some of these. Number 6 is prior to removal of any trees along Mary Hall Road, as shown on the intersection sightline exhibit dated July 26, 2022. The developer shall provide written notification to property owners for trees removed from the right-of-way in front of their property, and request permission to plant an 8-foot tall tree on their property but near the right-of-way line. The property owner should be given 2 weeks to respond in writing, and if a response is not obtained or a response is negative, a tree shall be planted on the developer's property instead. And these and some of these others were carried over from 2011 or 12 approval. Number 7 was no rock crushing or use of heavy machinery shall be permitted between the hours of 5 p.m. and 8 a.m. on weekdays, nor any time on weekends or legal holidays. Number 8, rock crushing locations shall be approved by staff in a central location and cited to have the least impact on surrounding neighbors. Number 9, construction shall comply with the construction standards of section 7.4. Number 10, excavated and/or processed material shall be used only on-site or for off-site improvements associated with this development. Number 11, excavation of vertical cuts shall not exceed 10 feet at any one time. Number 12, final plans shall be reviewed to the satisfaction of the town engineer. Number 13, westerly water approval shall be provided prior to issuance of any zoning permits for construction. And number 14, conservation easement and management plan shall be required for areas to be held by the condominium association as permanent open space. that's it for the
And we were
recommended
going to
stipulations.
add a condition with regard to light intrusion.
Oh, right,
At the two locations that might be impacted at the intersection of the new road and Mary Hall.
Well, for the
Simply that the
developer,
developer work.
to work with the neighbors.
The developer work with the neighbors
On a screening
to try to buffer.
idea.
With
Light
and
intrusion.
implement a screening plan.
If I just may say, those are private property owners, so I would ask that you place a caveat, provided that the private property owner is willing to cooperate, because we don't have the land
I
to do
want to
it.
word it exactly that way.
Yeah.
I don't want to create a condition that's impossible for you to comply with.
Thank you.
So Keith, you can translate what was just said much more articulately than I did into an appropriate condition.
Let's see. Applicant shall work with neighbors to develop and implement a screening plan provided
The
Permission with the landowner.
Actively cooperate.
I would suggest something along the lines of the applicant shall work with adjacent neighbors at the entrance of the project on Mary Hall Road to provide screening for light intrusion, provided such neighbors are willing to allow planting on their property.
Reasonable.
Excellent.
Reasonable. Yeah.
Cooperate or something along those lines.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Anything else, Keith? Are we caught up on that side?
Maybe 15 stipulations.
Because I have a mess of questions for Mr. Sweeney here. Don't get comfortable
No,
yet,
I think
please.
that's, yeah, I think that's it.
You're all set? Keith?
Yeah.
Okay. Exactly how many trees will be coming down on Mary Hall Road? Well, here's another way to put the question. Is your plan accurate depicting the trees that exist, or are those just pictographs plopped down to look like?
So the existing condition plan came from Terenzi Excavation, and they're the original survey.
10 years old.
So Bill Fry's actually, who's our lead engineer, who can't be here tonight, actually went out and looked at the site.
Yep.
And some of those trees are not exactly located where they're shown on the plan. In fact, there are more trees shown within the sight line than actually may exist. So we don't think, I think there's like 3 or 4 trees if you're coming out to the left that intersect the sight line within the right-of-way. There may only be 1 or 2. So some of it's going to have to be field checked to make sure that it's there.
But we're not talking dozens or...
No, no, no. You can see it on the sight line plan. I think it's 3 or 4 trees to the left. Yeah, to the left.
Can I add, is the town tree warden being involved in that process at all?
To the extent that they're involved in any removal of a tree in a right-of-way, yeah, absolutely. But there are minimum sightline requirements that are required, to get adequate sightline. Again, what we saw is the actual survey that showed those trees isn't necessarily as accurate as we would have done ourselves.
Site plan 1 with the chain link fence all around that large retention basin?
Yes.
On that southeast corner?
Yep.
Roughly. Is there any way to soften that from a chain link fence to something?
It is a chain link fence for security purposes,
keep
but
kids
if
out
you
from
look
a
at the
flooding
detail,
situation?
it's not a typical chain link. It's got the black polymer vinyl coating on it, so it's going to be black. It's got the rubberized material on it, which really softens it quite a bit, and it looks a lot more acceptable. It's not a galvanized steel fence.
Okay. And the same type of fencing will be used on top of the retaining wall?
I believe that's correct. That's what's called for right now.
And what is the retaining wall made out of for that driveway down there?
I think what we right now have modular block construction is proposed for the
Now,
wall.
what does that mean, modular block? Is it textured? Is it mafia blocks? Is it?
No. Maybe you want to come up and just introduce yourself. And
That's probably not a politically correct. Is it just plain cement?
Unilock, right?
Yeah. Hi, Jessica Bates, principal engineer at BL Companies. It's a segmental block retaining wall, so it can be two. It can be a small form block, or it can be a larger form block. It's really based on manufacturer and everything. It usually has like a split rock sort of face, and it can come in various colors, from grays to reds to browns or anything like that. Versalock is one, Unilock, Ready
It's
Rock.
architectural though.
Yes,
It's not.
okay. Yes, no,
this
it's-
isn't
it's
the
not like-
large monolithic
No,
2
no.
by 2
Well, all it
block.
said was block retaining
It's not
wall,
like
so I'm
the
just
like
getting
4 by 3
clarification.
mafia block sense. No, it's like, it's got an architectural, like split stone
Right.
face on it
Okay.
usually.
This is the most amazing photometric plan I've ever seen, but I don't see a plan, a detail of what light pole you're using. It just says 15 feet high, but there's no detail anywhere that I can find
For
of
the
a light
pole
pole.
itself,
Yeah,
oops, geez, I left the plans up there. It's in the back of the set.
you know, it's obviously downward facing, and you have 4 different models with different lumens, and
Yeah,
I'm
it'll
just
be
curious what they look
dark sky
like.
compliant, full cutoff fixtures.
Okay.
It's after that, no, it's right there.
Did I miss it?
Usually they're apex. Nope.
We're happy to provide a
Yeah.
detail for the light pole to be approved by staff. That's something that's important.
I'm really asking for Lynn, but... No, I was just curious. I mean, this is a very detailed plan. That was
Yeah.
not on there. Next question is very minor, but you say you have a fire pit. Who controls the on and off? And is there a safety switch? And is that a propane fed from underground?
It's
How
going
does
to
that-
be done just like we did at Perkins Farm, so I'm going to let Matt answer that.
So it's a propane fire pit. If you go by Perkins Farm, you'll see a large rock in the middle of a circle, and we actually have the fire pit cut into that. It's set up with a remote and a timer, and that remote and the timer are kept in the pavilion. So the fire can only burn, I believe, for like 40 minutes before it shuts off, and then everybody has to stand up, move around for a second, and go turn it back on, and then come back and do it again. So.
Huh, okay, thank you. So no little kid can get at it?
No, it's
fiddle
very
it.
secure, and it has to be done with the remote.
Right, okay, thank you. Is there any public access to the Stonington Land Trust property?
There is, to the Stonington Land Trust property, yes, there's access off of Meadow Road. Can we go to the larger plan?
Oh, there is, okay.
Yeah. We are not providing public access to the open space on our property.
Right.
Simply because of the proximity of our open space to actual dwelling units.
Right.
We do have, though, I just would point out, plan, I should have mentioned it earlier.
I have
So
questions.
access to the Stonington Land Trust property is off Meadow Road.
Okay.
But we do have an access point for the town, which didn't exist before. We have an access point for the town to get to their parcel through our property for maintenance and for things like deadfall and things like that. That's for city officials only to get in there, public works. If they
I was
can get in.
wondering, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's it for me.
All right, thank you.
Just one question, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman. Is there standby power for the wastewater lift station?
I believe there's the provisions for a generator.
Yeah.
I don't see it on the DN7.
There's a weatherproof control box, and I believe there is a standby generator. I don't know the fuel type associated with it.
Note to contractor, pump station shall have provisions for an external auxiliary power supply.
Typically, there is a standby, like Generac
Yeah.
sort of standby generator to allow power and pumping. I believe it's typically called for in the specification.
I don't see it on here.
The power box is shown on DN7.
Yeah,
in
the power
top
box
right.
is shown, but I don't see any provisions for emergency generator.
I mean, where it's located.
That's something they can update.
We'll definitely make sure it's added. It's just not shown out in the.
Okay, so you're saying it is provided? Okay, thanks, John.
Happy if you want to make that additional stipulation.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Couple. Do you have an idea, number of houses that are within that 500 feet of the pre-post surveys?
Usually make it look good.
Yes, excuse me, sir.
Okay. And if something happens, it comes out of that $7 million?
Yeah, so that's the bond limit. If there's an issue with a well or an issue with a building, if there's an issue with the well, our general notes require an action plan to address the issue as well. And so Keith was right that we shouldn't be talking. Keith was right that our general notes on blasting are much more comprehensive than the original notes. And the big thing is the wells that, before we were just basically giving insurance for 2 wells. Now we're doing every well within 500 feet.
Keep it approximate, the square footage of the original buildings that were approved versus the square footage of the houses?
I could probably do that calculation.
I think there's like 18 to 2200 square foot units for each of the units.
Yeah, I'm just curious enough on how much it went down or up.
I think I could do a whole one.
You have another question?
My last one, I think it's on ours, on page 39, it says the condo association is going to own the top land. I think you said there's no more condo associations in Connecticut.
No, yeah, so let me explain that. Back in the 70s, we used to have a condominium act in Connecticut that governed all the old condominiums. So the legislature did away with that, replaced it with an overarching common interest community act that covers condominiums, but also covers things like co-ops and planned unit developments. And so this would be a common interest community. It's not a condominium per se because we're selling single-family detached homes, but they're all covered now under the same group of laws and protections. And basically, it allows a developer to define the unit which they're selling, and then the rights to both limited and common elements within the project that are jointly shared by the parties, and then gives the obligations of all the parties to the maintenance of those common areas.
And I'll think page 39 says the condominium association is going to own it. Is that correct or not correct?
It's an older version of, but ultimately today in Connecticut we call it the common interest community.
It's the same. Okay.
It's the same.
Okay.
Then we have one more question from the board. Let's find out. Hang on. Are there any more questions from the board this week?
No.
All right. I think I'd ask you all to sign back in again if you haven't already spoken. If you already have spoken, you're all set. Yeah. Okay. I just saw a bunch of hands go up. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, thank you. I just heard for the first time that there was going to be a right-of-way for town officials right along the stone wall that's adjacent to our property and to, I think, Mr. Madden's property as well. What is the reason for going that way and not providing access to the town through the gravel road and around the other side of the wetlands? And second question is, what is going to be the nature of that right-of-way? Are you going to clear a path?
It's not a path. There is no clearing. It was something that staff asked us to do so that they could get there. If it would be used infrequently, if at all, and again, only if there was an issue with deadfall, just the right to get to that area across the land. So we're not clearing it. There's no trail. There's going to be trees there. Certainly, if we could move it if necessary, it was just put there as a convenience. Again, the town asked us to add it to the plan, but absolutely no clearing. And it's not something that people are going to be coming and going. We don't want no public in the purple areas at all.
So it's not landlocked?
Exactly. So, because the old plan, the town got that strip, but there's no way to get to it.
No way to get to it, right? So it's not landlocked?
It's not landlocked.
Would it make sense to come in off the emergency access road and go in behind the house to get to that lot?
If that's something that the commission, well, it doesn't matter to us. We're not clearing it. We're not opening it up. It's just a right to get to it across the property. So if you'd like us to move it, add that as a condition, we'd be happy to do that.
It probably makes more sense in case DPW needs to get back there.
Send a truck in or something.
I can't imagine a reason why they don't want to get a truck back there, but It could be, you know, if you had a big tree that was dead that came down, you had to remove it, you might want to be able to get somebody in there, so.
Oh, if there was a fire in there, you might want to be the case on it. Well, that would go.
Yeah, we're happy to move it. It's just, again, it was put on at the request of the town.
Yeah, I think I was going to swing it around behind.
So you could put an additional stipulation is relocate the town's access to the town open space.
Would that help your budding property owners if it were along that stone wall?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
Would that satisfy you if it was?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, basically.
One more?
I'm not an engineer, but why not take it in off of the bottom of the...
Please use the microphone. Oh, thank you.
I'm not an engineer, but why not make it the shortest possible distance and come up the hill from Mary Hall before you get to that very first house and go that way? Why go all that whole long distance?
Why don't we just leave it flexible?
Yeah.
Some sort of minimalist approach that's acceptable to public works and emergency staff.
I like your word. The other question I had, the other question I had is, did I hear that there's going to be a pretty chain link fence down by the drainage on Mary Hall? The detention, and on the wall going up the road?
Well, there's a certain segment you have to look up closely on that entrance way. There's a cut.
Right.
And so it's 5 feet tall, so you have to protect people from jumping into the roadway. So my understanding is, I don't know how many feet it is, but there's a chain link fence on top of that retaining wall.
Man, you guys are making it nasty looking.
It's ugly, ugly.
So regarding the fence, I've actually had discussions with Mr. Green there about maybe working in something at a later time, maybe it's a split rail black fence, something that looks a little nicer there. So right now on the plan. Yeah, something, but yeah, so right now that's what's on the plan, that's what I'm going with. But I do have an intention to come back and revisit that and see if there's something else that would be acceptable, both for insurance for the association as well as something that will look a little nicer at the end.
Fair enough. Yep. I think there's one last question from the audience.
I was just wondering, there's already stipulation about wells and septic, correct? As far as pre-build and afterwards, if there's a problem. But what about cracks in the foundation? We haven't discussed that at all. And I'm concerned about that. Oh, I'm sorry, my name is Fran Slater, 446 Greenhaven, directly across the street from construction.
Okay. Attorney will answer that for you.
I'm sorry?
The attorney will answer that question.
So the larger pre-blast survey ring is for structures, which would include foundations. So there's protection. Everybody within 500 feet is going to get it offered, and anybody between 500 and 1,500 feet upon request will look at your foundation beforehand. And then if there's a crack that occurs after blasting, then there's coverage through the bonding to do the repairs. The only other thing I would just say is the reason why that access way was not shown where the gentleman indicated before is because there's some grade issues in that area. And we also have the retaining wall running along there. So we thought that the better access to the town property was on that western end when you have a better grade to get into it.
You have to look at the cut.
Yeah, and so the comment that Mr. Sheehan said, an access that's appropriate for our needs and for the towns, we'll work that out. No problem at all.
Could the stipulation for that access easement just say that it will not be adjacent to neighbors' property lines? Because that was the issue, is that it's right against somebody's property.
Sure, to the extent possible, we'll locate it away from any neighbor.
Okay.
Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Any other questions? Ryan?
No other questions.
Gary? Keith, any other input?
No, I mean, as far as
Captured everything?
the easement there, I would just say,
Hi, I'm so sorry. Can I just interrupt for 1 second? On SU1, there is a call-out that's roughly near the said forebay of the existing, or the proposed detention pond. that says provide and install backup generator for pump station. So it is on the site utility plan, it's just not shown in the details.
Okay.
So yes, I was.
So there's no need to put a stipulation in. There's emergency power.
You can, but it is shown on the site plans right now, it's just not called out specifically in the details. So that would come through like construction administration.
Thank you.
But it is on the site plan.
SP1?
SU, I'm sorry, SU1.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, back to you.
Yes, as far as the easement stipulation, I would just say something like relocate easement to town open space away from adjacent residences, subject to DPW approval, since it is them who'd be accessing it if they're employed.
Sounds fair?
Would that make a total of
16.
16?
All righty. A motion to close the hearing.
Make a motion to close the hearing.
Ryan, thank you, Chuck. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Now, first, make a motion to approve the 5 special permit waivers that the applicant has submitted as written.
Thank you, Ryan. Do we hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Chuck.
They're stipulated on page 48 of Keith's note. Want to go through them? I've got them right here.
Sure. Yes, please.
Okay, so there's a shadow plan, 3D model for projects, flood hazard reports, school impact evaluation, and phasing requirements for projects. It doesn't make any sense because a single phase is proposed.
Right.
There's a nice chart there that talks about justification for each one, and there appears to be adequate justification.
Agreed. Any other discussion?
Agreed.
All in favor of the waivers?
Aye.
Let's see, make a motion to approve the special use permit as submitted by the applicant.
Do we have to add the conditions to this, Keith, or is that where all of the 17 conditions, the 14 that you specified?
Yeah, if anything, I'd probably include them with the special use permit.
Okay. So stipulate, are there 16 stipulations?
Right.
Actually, I think there's 17. If we include light mitigation, emergency power, and access.
The emergency power.
Emergency power they addressed.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Emergency power was covered.
Right. So that would be 16.
I'd like to leave emergency power if we can. Okay. I don't think it's clear. I'd like to leave emergency power in.
Okay. So
Sorry, can you word that?
That the wastewater lift station be equipped with standby power.
Okay. And that's number 17?
That would be number 16. So 15 would be light mitigation. 16 would be standby power for the wastewater lift station. And 17 would be modify access.
Okay. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Thank you, Chuck. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. The last one.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the subdivision as requested, and to be safe with the same stipulations 1 through 17.
Seconded.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Ryan. Any other discussion? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any other business you want to talk about?
Yes. Well, one other thing that, at the next meeting, the town attorney would like to have an executive session with the commission on the Chippewa Trail appeal. This was the CAM application the commission denied. They appealed it to court. We'd like to get the commission's input on some things. So what we're thinking is starting the meeting at 6, having the executive session before the regular meeting at 7.
In this room?
In this October 4th, just before the normal meeting.
So you'll send an email out as well, a reminder, 6 o'clock?
Yeah,
You have to do something with the meeting notice at all?
Yeah, we have to.
You have to notice that, right?
Yeah, we have to notice that.
Okay.
I still have to double check that the room is available at that early time, but they will be set up at that time anyway, so it should be fine.
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Thank you, Mike.
Second.
Thank you, Chuck. Is there any further discussion on that? So moved.